All right. How's everybody doing? I saw 2 thumbs up only. Can we get, okay, we got a few more. All right, that's good. Welcome everybody to the March 26th, 2025 City of Edina Planning Commission meeting. On behalf of the rest of the commission, we are grateful that you are here in person, and to those tuning in remotely. I say that every time, but it's your curiosity, your participation, and your feedback that is crucial to this process as we navigate how to use our land in the best way. So without, I guess, further ado, we have 3 public hearings tonight. They cover a range of items: sign variances, a building expansion, and a rezoning, subdivision, and site plan for Opus. It's important to know that your feedback matters. We have an engagement website with the city, www.bettertogetheredina.org. That is your portal to sharing information, to learning about upcoming projects, ones that are in process, and ones that have already finished. Any feedback that's shared there makes its way to us, and we commit to you guys that we consider that feedback as we make recommendations tonight regarding those public hearings. I'm going to do a quick rundown of the agenda so you know what to expect, and then we'll get right into it. We'll begin with a call to order, a roll call, an approval of tonight's meeting agenda, followed by the prior meeting minutes. We have special recognitions and presentations tonight, which is the election of our officers, something we do annually. Then we have community comment, which is your chance to talk about a matter not on tonight's agenda. You'd have 3 minutes to do so. After that, we have the 3 public hearings, and I'll get into the specific process of those and what to expect when we get to that point. Then we wrap it up with chair, member, and staff comments, and then adjournment. With that, we'll call this meeting to order. And then roll call.
Commissioner Nelson.
Here.
Commissioner Elkire.
Here.
Commissioner Padilla.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Day.
Here.
Commissioner Bornstein.
Here.
Commissioner Felt.
Here.
Commissioner Hanneman.
Here.
Chair Bennett.
Here. Next we have roll call. Or sorry, that was roll call. Next we have the approval of tonight's meeting agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Next we have the approval of the prior meeting's minutes.
Motion to approve the prior meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right, next we have special recognitions and presentations, and this is the election of officers. We discussed this briefly last time toward the end of the meeting. I just wanted to give a little transparency to the process, but the Planning Commission is an appointed body by the City Council. There's kind of a round of interviews, and they strategically pick to get a very wide breadth and depth of residents here. So every one of us is volunteering their time and effort and passion and experience and skills for the future of Edina. And so we have elections and new appointments that happen around March. So Commissioner Miranda rolled off of the Planning Commission, which is typically a 3-year appointment, and you can serve up to 3 sets of those. And we welcomed a new commissioner, Commissioner Nelson, last time. And Commissioner Miranda was the vice chair. I serve as chair. So we need to find a new person to step in for vice chair and to kind of think about the future. And what we talked about last time is, since I've kind of filled a vacated role to begin with, and I've served on the commission for about 9 years, I don't plan on serving as chair the whole way through and then just leaving. I'll step down probably in a year, so I conclude my last 2 years as kind of a past chair role. So just keeping that in mind, this vice chair that we'll be electing is someone who is expected soon to kind of carry forth with these responsibilities. And then the incoming vice chair after that, as we just think ahead, would be the next one in line. And so there's 2 particular commissioners that were interested, Commissioner Elkire and Commissioner Smith. And from what we talked about last time, there's kind of mutual support for Commissioner Elkire to step into the vice chair role. And I'd offer, again, time to both Commissioner Elkire and Commissioner Smith just to chat about that. And then I'd be happy to make a motion for Commissioner Elkire as vice chair after that. But just let you guys get to know a little bit about your commissioners here.
I could start. Thank you, Chair Bennett. I know in the last meeting we did discuss a vice chair role, and being on the commission for about 2.5 years or so, I certainly wanted to support and step up and support the work that we do. And so I put my name in the hat, and I know Commissioner Alkire did as well. And he served on the commission for a much longer time period. And so he has a lot of experience and same kind of passion, and I think he'd be a great chair. So I think as a team, we all kind of felt pretty positive that Commissioner Alkire could step in as vice chair and hopefully succeed when Commissioner Bennett leaves. So with that, I am in full support of Commissioner Alkire moving into the vice chair position.
Thanks, Commissioner Smith and Chair Bennett. I can't remember exactly what I said 2 weeks ago, but just in a nutshell, as Commissioner Smith said, I have some experience both in this term and a prior term before I went to Utah. And I don't have any grand agenda for change. I think Jimmy does a fine job. So I feel like it's more a continuation. And I do have the interest and the capacity. I don't really have a day job, except maybe 15 or 20 hours a week. So I'm excited and honored to have the chance, and that's about the long and short of it.
Great, thank you guys. Anyone else have any comments? Otherwise, I'd be willing to, I guess, move to nominate Commissioner Elkire to vice chair.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. And then do we have to confirm?
You need to elect a chair and a secretary.
Okay. So we have a current secretary, Commissioner Bornstein, and you're good serving that out again?
It's up to everybody else, but I think I signed one document over the last 2 years I've served, I think, in that capacity. I'm happy to continue doing that if people feel like that signature I put on that piece of paper was, up to speed.
Well, with that, I definitely nominate you.
Vigorously second, yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right, I guess then re-elect myself as chair, but I can't do that.
I would make a motion to elect Jimmy Bennett as chair.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right, thank you guys. Thanks for bearing with us. Hope to give a little transparency to the process. And with that, we're moving on. So community comment, like I mentioned, this is a chance for anyone who's here in person to testify about anything not on tonight's agenda. You have 3 minutes to do so. Please come up to either podium. When the light turns green, you have 3 minutes. State your full name, address. And when it turns red, your time is up, and we'll ask you to wrap it up. Is anyone here for community comment? How long do I wait till someone comes up? All right, I think that's good. We will move on from community comment right into our public hearings. So like I mentioned, we have 3 public hearings and what you can expect for each one. Again, we take feedback not just for projects, but also process. And we've had feedback over time, like what can we do to kind of speed this process up besides me rambling on and on and on. One of the things that we can do is kind of combine some of the Q&A that we have for staff and then followed by the developers. So we're going to try that tonight. So for what to expect, with a public hearing, an applicant, which could be a resident, the city, a municipality, a developer, puts in an application to do something that doesn't conform to our current codes. Staff puts together a bunch of facts and findings in a staff report, and then they consolidate that into a presentation that you're about to see tonight for us. And so how we'll switch it up tonight is after they do that, then we'll offer the chance for the developer, the applicant, or whoever to come up, give their presentation, and then both parties can kind of stand for questions so we can be a little more efficient with time there. After that is the public hearing, so that's your chance for anyone who's here in person or tuning in remotely, and we'll give you the password and stuff once we get to that, to testify about the matter. So you'd have 3 minutes to do so, similar to community comment. After that's up, then it comes back to the Planning Commission to deliberate, and we'll make our decision, which is a recommendation for approval or denial of the request at hand. And with that, Planner Rocker, take it away.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. This is a variance request for 4300 West 66th Street. It is the Edina Aquatic Center. It's actually the pump house building. So this is the site. We have the Edina Aquatic Center. The pump room is over here on the east side, closer to the north part of the facility. There's West 64th Street that comes around the parking lot and around the swimming pool, and it's in between the pond and the pump house, and then goes north and then continues on. So the request is for a new or expanded portion of the existing pump house. This slide shows you in blue are all the water bodies in the aquatic center in the upper level, and then in the lower level, the red portion is the existing pump room, and the green portion is the addition. Most of the existing building is underneath the pool deck, so you only see a small portion of it when you're looking at the east side of the building. So these are the existing conditions. This would be looking down at the pump house. You don't see most of it. Again, this is the only portion of the pump room that you do see currently. There's a loading dock and an access drive on the south side. Here are some photographs of the existing conditions. This is the east side of that pump house building. This is the portion of the building that is actually not underneath the pool deck. You can see the pool deck further back, with most of the building underneath that pool deck. And again, driveway, loading area. Some more views, the pump room site as you're looking northbound on West 64th Street, also southbound on West 64th. If you're up on the pool deck looking down east over by the pond, and then again, an east elevation. The applicant, HGA Architects and Engineers, on behalf of the client, City of Edina, is requesting an 11.5-foot variance from section 36-1268, requiring a 50-foot setback from the ordinary high water elevation of the pond for a proposed pump house room facility replacement and expansion. The pump house room is located east of the original pump house room and situated between West 64th Street and the pond. So here are some photographs of the existing conditions and the interior of the building. And another one. The following slides include the exterior and interior photos of the current building. HGA Architects and Engineers were contracted by the city to perform conditions assessment of the existing pump room. The report outlines several critical deficiencies, and you can see them in the photographs, to the structure, mechanical and physical condition, and it's operationally outdated. The Aquatic Center opened in 1958 with some of the current infrastructure 67 years old. The original pump room has undergone retrofits over time and additions over decades, but years of exposure to the corrosive gases and a very limited headroom in height in a range of about 8 feet to 9.5 feet makes the space unsuitable for current equipment. This is a slide of the proposed main floor of the site plan of the expansion. It shows the setbacks of the new portion of the building. The minimum setback is 50 feet. You can see the blue line, which is the minimum setback from the pond. This is the portion that overlaps into the setback area. The closest point is at 38 feet 6 inches. The corner that is to the south of the new building is at little over 45 feet. So it's sort of a triangular portion that is overlapping into the setback. This is the upper deck of the addition, which will have an amenity space with pool cabanas. So it's the deck area above the building, similar to what's there right now in the existing pump room. However, it'll be much more enhanced. There will be a loading area on the north side of the building. And you can see that here with the driveway access. And a more detailed building floor plan. It gives you an idea of what sort of equipment and facilities that will be included in the new building. So these are some renderings, elevations of the new building, new structure. It shows the amenity deck with the pool cabanas. This would be looking northbound. You see the lower level, which houses the pump room with all the mechanical facilities. And then the upper deck, there will be the cabanas further away, and then an upper deck that is on the east side of the cabana area. So this is sort of a bird's eye view. This is the area that we're referring to. This is also a covered area for lounge chairs, but this is that cabana area above the pump room. And then an elevation of the south side of the building. This is a slide of the hard-drawn elevations and a comparison. So they're not to scale to one another. This is an existing cutaway of the pump room, and it shows that there's ceiling heights of 8 feet and 9.5 feet, which are subpar for the equipment that needs to be installed. And then, the proposed building with an increased ceiling area, and again, amenity deck above. So this is the materials and color palette that's going to be used. And it will be consistent with the bathhouse that is above along the pool deck. This will all be graffiti resistant for the pump room area. So staff does recommend approval. Staff recommends approval of a variance from the Edina City Code for section 36-1268 to allow for an 11.5-foot variance for the requirement of a 50-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark of a naturally occurring lake, pond, or stream to allow a setback of 38.5 feet at the closest point of the pump room facility. Approval is subject to the following findings: that the proposal for the pump room expansion is reasonable. The use is part of a permitted use in the single dwelling unit district. The aquatic center and all of its necessary parts are compatible uses within the single dwelling unit district. The use is consistent with the future land use designation for low density residential in the comprehensive plan. The variance is needed due to the functionally obsolete size of the existing building built in 1958, constructed under different setback requirements, which are current holdover from conditions that were not created by the applicant or the aquatic center. Prior to 1990, the setback required from the ordinary high water elevation of the pond for the pump room was 25 feet and conformed at the time. The variance is to allow the expansion of the proposed pump house space that will not alter the essential character of the locality. The new pump house with the upper pavilion will enhance the user experience of the center and address current operational deficiencies with minimal intrusion into the setback. Approval should be subject to the survey plans and engineering submissions attached to the staff report dated February 21st, 2025. Watershed district approval and conformance with the city engineer's building permit review and conformance with the tree plan as part of the building permit. And with that, I will stop and answer questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Chris. Great presentation. Like I mentioned, we're going to offer it up to the rest of the project team or applicant to come forward. If there's anything else you'd like to add? No? I see a lot of head shakes to the side. No? All right, gone. Okay. I guess if any commissioners have questions right now for staff or the rest of the project team, this would be the time. Commissioner Day.
You know why we changed from 25 to 50 feet in 1990 for the setback?
It was mandated by the Department of Natural Resources. It's not something that the city had a choice.
Okay, all right.
Commissioner Nelson.
I'm assuming you had some preliminary discussion with Watershed District on this?
Engineering has. They've been working very closely with the Watershed District on it, as has, I believe, HGA has as well.
No other.
Can you tell me a little bit about swimming pool pond? Is that an official name? Is that what city calls it?
Yeah, the swimming pool pond. It does collect runoff from the facility. I am not as well versed on that particular pond as some others. It is considered, it does require a setback, which means it was a naturally occurring lake, pond, or stream. And I mean, it's currently surrounded by roads.
And can I ask what's going to happen with the existing pump room?
Well, they're going to be removing it and rebuilding it in the same location with the expansion.
So it's going to be utilized as
Yes.
two. There will be equipment in it as well.
Yes.
Okay. And the whole half ship is going away?
No, nothing on the amenity, on the deck is going to change, with the exception of the addition of the cabana.
Here comes the team.
Oh, here we go.
I can answer some of these.
Yeah.
So the pump room the existing pump room will also be utilized with the expansion. So that space will continue to be used for equipment. And then as I was coming up, I missed.
Oh, so the deck above the pirate ship, the half pirate
Is
ship?
staying. Yeah, the
Okay.
pirate ship is staying. Yeah,
I
so
couldn't
we're-
see it in the renderings.
It's just an oval. It's hard to see in the drawings.
Okay, I could
Yeah.
see it in the plans, but
Yeah.
not in the, so you're rebuilding rebuilding the pump room and the deck up above.
We're expanding the pump room,
You're expanding the pump room.
reutilizing the existing, and then the deck is being expanded because of the pump room, and that's where the cabanas will be. Otherwise, the deck remains essentially the same
Okay, because there was corrosion in that room,
in
So-
the existing pump room, correct?
and you're going to address that, but most of that structure's going to stay.
Yeah, and some of the structure has already been addressed, the issues structurally, but the equipment replacement is going to help control some of the corrosive gases
Okay.
that are going on there. We're going to ventilate it better.
Okay, and as part of that, you said there's pipes coming out that make it difficult to put some of the equipment in that room. Can you
Right,
talk
because
about that a little bit?
Yes, excuse me. The pool, the existing water bodies have drains and supplies that are already, of course, attached to those water bodies, and they come into the existing pump room now, so we'll continue to utilize those.
And can they, I'm just wondering, we've had previously a couple of projects where people wanted to put patios in a setback from a body of water. And we have said no to those. So I'm kind of wondering about the process that you went through to kind of get to this point, rather than maybe rebuild that existing pump room, if it needed work, to kind of utilize that to kind of keep this setback from the water. Can you go through that?
Yeah, maybe I'll start and you can chime
Okay,
in.
okay.
So the existing pump room is too small for the expanded equipment that needs to be installed. So we needed to expand in some way. Of course, keeping the pipes coming in as they are that are already connected underneath for the drains of the existing water bodies made it difficult to try to think about moving those, because you'd have to rebuild the water bodies if we were to move the existing pump room. So the expansion ended up where it needed to be because of that adjacency with the existing location of utilities under the pool. The cabanas above are taking advantage of, and this is a great renderings to show, are taking advantage of that space that's extending the deck. And they are, the main wall there is set back from that furthest point where we're asking for the variance. But it's still, is it still in the? Yeah, I'll let Paul maybe clarify.
Okay, yeah. We are building the cabanas on top to take advantage of the addition. It will be set back, but it'll still be about 8 feet away from the edge of the pump house. And so it will cross a little bit into that zone too. And I just want to add to the existing pump house is not tall enough. The new pump house will be taller by going deeper. So it'll be down further from the existing. Yeah.
I'm going through my questions. So there was no way to kind of scoop out underneath the existing pump room and use it? Is that where the pipes come up?
They come in the sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean, there are filters in these rooms, so the water is going from the pools, there's several pools, goes into the pump house, it's filtered and sent back. There's no way to really dig deeper in the existing pump house because we'd be undercutting the main pool. It's built right up against the edge of the pool. So the edge of the pump house is the pool wall. So we can't really reasonably dig deeper right there. We'd be undercutting the pool and it'd be very expensive to try and reinforce the pool. Probably have to rebuild some of it.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell me a little bit about the bur oaks too? There's a part of this that was talking about doing digging out for water.
Infiltration basin?
Yeah.
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 So right now, the water from the drains around the pool, let's say the pool deck, they drain out to the pond. And with this project, we're going to be adding an infiltration basin, and 5,000 square feet of area is going to drain into the new infiltration basin. Will be filtered and cleaned, and then it will go into the pond.
And is that going in where that kind of parking area is? So you're not kind of cutting into any, you're just taking out that parking area for the infiltration basin and not cutting into the, okay. When are you planning on doing this?
So we're almost done with the CDs. We're going to be putting it, it's going to be bid on. They're looking for a CM right now. And then in the fall, we'll be bidding.
Because there was talking there, like some trees, I know Edina has a tree ordinance and they're very careful with their trees and people have to go through it, right? And so like the best time to cut roots for bur oaks is in the spring. And I suspect there's some roots kind of heading towards the pond rather than the other way. So that's my question about the bur oaks.
So the CMAR hasn't been hired yet, but there is a potential because that work wouldn't disturb the pool opening,
Okay.
being used. Perhaps there could be a way for the trees to be removed before real construction starts in the fall. So that could speed up, but then I know there's other issues with nesting birds and things we'd have to take into account.
Yeah, you're not thinking of taking down the bur oaks?
I don't think so, sorry.
No,
I just
okay.
know there's
Okay.
some where the basin is trees. We do have a,
Protection plan.
yeah,
Okay. Okay, thank you.
sorry. Yeah, not to confuse the matter.
Any other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Nelson.
Chair, sorry. I just did want to make one more note. Obviously, it's in the staff report, it says, this pump house must be located here. Obviously, it really needs to be located here. There'd be an extreme expense to move it and put it somewhere else. You're talking about rebuilding pools and relining it. The only other comment I really wanted to make was that I'm going to abstain here. Don Lahr did propose on this project, so I'll be abstaining. Just
Yep, thank you. Commissioner Haneman.
Perhaps a dumb question, but the point of the setback, as I understand it, is in part to keep things out of a high water event. Are we concerned at all that we're digging down and spending all this money to put equipment that isn't going to like water in the case of a heavy rain and flood event?
Right, that's a good question. And although we are crossing the setback, we are building the floor 30 inches above grade, so it would still be above the flood zone.
Hi, thanks again. Just a quick question about safety. You know, when I would always frequent this. I have a membership. Summertime, it's the best time to visit the aquatic center. There's a ton of kids running around. I'm looking at the cabana. I just want to get your sense of safety, right? So we have the railing there. Do you have any concerns at all with, kids climbing over that thing, running out into the street, climbing up to get into the aquatic center? Just talk to me a little bit more about, the design and just the thinking on how it's going to be used, and any concerns at all you have with safety, folks getting in or getting out from that side.
Yeah, that's a good question. The cabanas will be a floor up from the street below on the east side, and there'll be guardrails, 42 inches high minimum, to protect people. And then in terms of people sort of climbing in and out, there is a chain link fence that goes around the perimeter. It runs up to the cabanas area, and then it continues again on the south side of the cabanas area. So it will help prevent people from sort of scaling the wall and trying to get in. But there is a gate also that we're providing. That's a staff-only gate. It will not be used by the public. It'll be locked. And then the cabanas themselves will be locked when they're not in use. They have to be reserved. The staff will open them up for a reserved function, and then they would be shut again after that party is done using the facility.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate it. Great presentation. This is a public hearing, and so we will move to that part of the public hearing. So just for those who are tuning in remotely to participate, take out your phone, call the following number, 312-535-8110, and enter access code 2868-688-0356. The password is 5454, and then press *3 on your keypad to jump in the queue to speak. Little context on these very long instructions. We've inquired about trying to make that quicker for people, but we get a really good deal. So it's as simple as that. Like if you want to spend more money, You could argue with the city, but we seem to support that reason. That should be up on your screen, so you can reference that. And while we give you time to jump in the queue, we will open it to whoever might be here in person that would like to testify. You have 3 minutes to do so. Similarly, please come up, state your full name, address. All right. Seeing no one rushing to the stand. Do we have anyone in the queue yet?
We do not. Should we give it 1 minute?
Yeah, we'll give it a minute. If anyone knows a great elevator music person, we're all ears.
It has been 1 minute and nobody has joined the call, so I believe it is safe to proceed.
A motion to close the public hearing, anyone?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Public hearing's closed. Take it back to the commission to deliberate. Any thoughts? Yeah.
So as I was kind of mentioning, I use this pool all the time. I think it's a great resource for the city. In terms of the design, I think it makes sense where the pump room is going to be located. We want to maintain as much of the infrastructure as we can, and we're going to leverage that. Moving all the pipes to a new location would certainly be way more expensive for the city and may not get us a whole huge amount of value. It's just curious that, the roadway, I think it's like 7 feet from the edge of the road to the actual proposed pump room wall, the closest point. And I think generally speaking, the right-of-way and the setback requirements is like around 5 feet roughly for most buildings that are 8 feet tall. So if this was a house, it probably would be okay in that location. I know it encroaches a little bit beyond what the state recommended, but given the location, the infrastructure, what they're trying to build here, and the amenities, the pool deck expansion, and the cabana, I think those things are really positive for the city. And so it just seems like, I'm totally in favor of this. I think it makes sense, and I think we just have to work within the constraints that we have. So I'll be in favor of this addition.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Felt?
Congratulations on the design. I think the design is absolutely beautiful. I think the cabanas would be lots of fun. I'm kind of struggling because we have previously on a couple of occasions, and the city has recommended against putting things in high water level areas. And one of them was for a patio structure, and we've kind of towed the line on some of those. And I understand that the pool is an important piece of the city, and it is for the enjoyment of quite a few people. So I'm struggling with it a little bit. I mean, there's been no kind of cost-benefit analysis or social benefit analysis to this piece about whether or not this could have been done in a different way. Because I think if we as a city are asking residents not to do this. I think we have to spend a lot of time kind of justifying why we can do it. And I suspect this will probably pass because I think a lot of people, I mean, it is a public amenity. But I think on this one, I'm just going to take the side of the conservationists because we've been doing that for the past couple of years. So that's where I'm going to come down on this one. But it is a beautiful project, and it'll look a lot better than what's there now. So I agree with that.
Thank you. Commissioner Hahnemann.
That's a very good point, Meriwether, that I hadn't considered. I guess, and maybe this is back to the applicant, or what was the impetus of doing this now? How did the city come to the decision that we needed to sort this out last year? That amount of rust, right, that's been there for a while. I mean, clearly it's an aging problem. So to Meriwether's point, what was the evaluation that occurred to get us to this as our option for all intents and purposes because of the cost to do something different?
We could get the answer. I just want to interject with maybe a way to think about this too. Maybe taking a step back, with variances, there's the pyramid of discretion. We didn't show it, but what it means is, every project is unique, and the bigger the ask, the more discretion we have to make decisions. And you can kind of hear already there's some opposing thoughts. But when I look at the conditions of what needs to be achieved to secure a variance, to me this is a very straightforward approval. And as I look at the conditions for practical difficulties, meaning are there practical difficulties in complying with the code? And that doesn't mean, is there a different use that could be put forward that does comply? It is the proposed use reasonable in nature? One, this is reasonable. And then two, is the plight of the landowner due to circumstances that are unique to the property or similarly zoned properties? And this is an extremely unique situation. It was built when it complied, and now the code changed and it doesn't. And there's a lot of other nuances to do something else would just be irresponsible, like financially. And then if granted, it will not alter the essential character of the locality. And I think the alternative, it's the opposite. I think there's a great creative adaptive reuse to capture more space above and bring more benefit to the public. So to me, I just see it just easily knocking the conditions for a variance. And we don't need to necessarily know how many, thousands or hundreds or dozens or just a few different things were considered. It's just, is this reasonable? Number one, I think it is. I don't know if that helps anyone or not. Maybe not. Any other comments? Yeah, Commissioner Alcar.
I'm glad Commissioner Felt brought that up. And just for what it's worth, and I also support what Chair Bennett just said, but there was two ways of thinking about it that might help, might not. One is that compared to the other instances that you mentioned from not too distant past, this project delivers a public benefit rather than a private benefit. And you alluded to that, I think. The second thing which is compelling to me is that the main feature of the land between the new pump house and the pond is a 2-lane road. And that's certainly a different circumstance than anything we have seen in residential applications around ponds. I think we might have looked at some of those differently if there was a 2-lane road between the patio and the pond. So for what it's worth, just sharing some thoughts.
Yeah, I think that is all absolutely fair. I think I personally want to see a little bit more from the city when they are suggesting that they can get a variance from the high water mark. And not for residential. So I just want a little bit more background, and that's why. I do see.
I think that's very
benefit.
fair.
Yeah.
And we should hold ourselves to a higher standard regardless. So. Great point. Any other comments or proposed motions?
Did we close the public hearing? Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Okay, so
No, it's still going.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance for the Edina Aquatic Center water treatment building expansion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Abstaining?
Aye.
Motion carries. Yeah, it's the double negative, aye and nay, okay. Thank you. Great work, congratulations to the residents and the city for advancing this public benefit. Got to take care of our stuff. All right, next we have our second of 3 public hearings. This is a sign variance for Meeting House Church, 6200 Colonial Way. All right, take it away.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. The request tonight is for 2 sign variances for 2 signs at Meeting House Church located at 6200 Colonial Way. 6200 Colonial Way is located at the southwest corner of Olinger Boulevard and Colonial Way, north of Highway 62 and west of Countryside Park. The 13-acre site is zoned R1 Single Dwelling Unit District and is the existing site of Meeting House Church. The church is currently in the process of replacing their existing signage on site. And the church is proposing to install 3 monument signs along their 3 street frontages, Olinger Boulevard, Colonial Way, and Highway 62. Currently on site, there's 2 existing signs. At a time in the past, there was a 3rd sign adjacent to Highway 62, but over time it has fallen. The first variance request tonight is for sign 1. It's located at the intersection of Olinger Boulevard and Colonial Way. There is an existing sign in the similar location that will be removed and replaced with the proposed sign. The variance request tonight is a 30-foot variance request to the 50-foot setback requirement from the ordinary high water elevation of the naturally occurring water body. This would allow the proposed sign to be placed at least 20 feet from the ordinary high water elevation. Engineering staff has reviewed the proposed location of the sign and did not have any concerns with the location of the sign in proximity to the body of water. In this instance, the 50-foot setback, as well as the required 20-foot setback from the curb for signs, would not leave any space for a freestanding sign at the corner at this intersection. There's also a 10-foot drainage and utility easement that the applicant is avoiding with the proposed location of the sign. The second variance request tonight is a sign height variance for sign number 3, the proposed sign that's adjacent to Highway 62. The request is for a 6-foot height variance to allow a 14-foot tall monument sign. The applicant is requesting the additional height for sign 3 due to the elevation of Highway 62. The additional height will allow for the sign to sit 8 feet taller than the center line elevation of Highway 62, which is the allowable height for monument signs in the zoning district. The proposed signage meets all of the requirements of the city's sign code, and it is a condition of approval that the signs that are illuminated would have to meet the illumination requirements of the city sign code. Staff believes that the requested variances are justified. The purpose and the intent of the code is to allow for monument signs that provide visibility without causing impacts on safety or sightlines. The requested variances would be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the code, and the use of the property would remain consistent with the comprehensive plan. There are practical difficulties in complying with the city's ordinance. The elevation height for sign 3 is reasonable due to the difference in elevation of Highway 62 versus the subject property. The applicant is requesting the additional height so the sign is visible 8 feet taller than the elevation center line of the road. The additional height for that sign is needed for visibility. The location of sign 1 is in a similar location of the existing sign on the site at the corner of Olinger and Colonial Way. The proposed location of the sign sits much higher than the body of water and won't have any negative impacts. Like I said, the city's engineering department did review the sign location and didn't have any concerns with the sign in proximity to the body of water. In each situation, the circumstance is unique to the property and is not created by the landowner, and the proposed signage will not alter the essential character of the locality. So tonight, staff's recommendation is to approve both of the requested variances based on the findings and conditions outlined in the staff report. And I'll note again that one of the conditions of approval is that the illuminated signs would need to meet the city's illuminated sign requirements of the sign code. And with that, I can answer any questions, and the applicant is also here tonight.
We'll welcome the applicant forward too if there's a separate presentation. Or if you'd just like to share some words, please come forward.
Do you just want to introduce yourselves too? Perfect, thank you.
Just introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Mike Casbohm. I'm the acting sign consultant for Meeting House Church. I'd be happy to answer any technical questions you have. So I'll just turn it over to Eric.
And my name's Eric Hansen. I'm the facility manager at Meeting House Church. So I'm representing the church here tonight on the replacement of these signs. I think she did a wonderful job summarizing anything that I would want to put in there in terms of detail. But I'd be happy to answer any questions about that as well. These are signs that were permitted back in, I think, 1977 when the church was originally built. And we're basically just trying to replace the ones that are there in the same locations with similar signs.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners, for either party? All right, Commissioner Alkire.
So if I understood the materials correctly, the signs 1 and 2 are video signs, and sign 3 is not?
Correct.
Okay. And the sign 3, in probably 90% of the images I saw, was parallel to the highway, but one of them looked like it was perpendicular. So it is parallel to the highway, right?
Correct. At one point, we were looking at maybe double-sided, but we have arrived at just doing a single-sided, basically parallel to 62.
And that sign, we are intending to illuminate with solar energy and just backlit the lettering on the sign. So it would be just backlit with LED lights.
Okay. Is that the old sign lying on the ground there?
It is. Yep, it just fell over one day.
Thank you very much.
It's a challenge because the ground there is really swampy. It is around the church as well, and it keeps decaying. We lose about an inch a year in height of our sign, so that's why that one went down. Mike's won't go down, for sure.
Just real quick, Earl, all the signs appear to be single-sided. It was a little hard to tell the one over on Olinger if it was double-sided or not, but it backed up to trees, so I assume it's not.
Correct. That one will be double-sided. It has been single-sided at a little bit of an angle as you drive in there, but this one will be double-sided.
It'll be perpendicular to
Olinger.
And
correct.
double-sided. Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Commissioner Felt.
For being here. Are you planning on keeping the signs lit or electrified 24 hours a day? Or what's the plan for?
I think the plan really is to go with the city rules and regulations on those. We may just turn them off at 10 o'clock at night. I mean, there's no reason probably it has to be on, but
right.
Really don't want flashing lights. I'm sure the neighbors don't either. So
right.
It's mainly so we can change some of our things once in a while with different services, different things going on. It's not to be a billboard that's advertising all the time.
Okay. That'd be nice if it was turned off at 10. I don't know what are the...
Yep, the hours of operation or hours are that the sign's turned off between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. unless the use is open.
Okay, thank you.
And just to note that with the video board, it's also not allowed to be changed more than once an hour unless it's the time or date or temperature.
Hopefully the temperature is accurate. You guys remember those back in the day where it's like 900 degrees out? Hopefully you guys don't have those struggles. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. This is a public hearing, so we're going to go to that part. Again, for those who might have just joined us, to participate remotely, take out your phone and call the following number, 312-535-8110. Enter access code 28686880356. The password is 5454. And press *3 to get in the queue to speak. That should pop up on the screen. Give you some time to do that, and while we wait, we'll open it to those who might be here in person that'd like to testify about this matter. Similarly, you got 3 minutes to do so. Please come up to either podium, full name, address. Anyone here that would like to testify? All right. Seeing none, I guess we'll just go to the queue. Do we have anyone in it?
We do not. I have the timer going.
Right, good.
It has been 1 minute and nobody has joined the call, so I believe it is safe to proceed.
I would concur. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Public hearing's closed. Bring it back to the commission to deliberate. Any comments, motions? Yep, Commissioner Smith.
So thank you for the presentation, and I was just making a comment here to Commissioner Alkire that he has a really good eye. I spent literally almost an hour yesterday trying to find that third sign.
You holding up the road.
Yes. I went on to Google and everything, and I was like, where is this sign? Because it just seemed odd to me, but it was literally just laying down in the image, and I didn't catch that. Yeah, so like the reason why that's important is, you know, this is a church where you could clearly see the bridge and the steeple from 494. So if I'm trying to find this church, I could see it on my approach easily, and that bridge is very iconic. You could, you know, it's kind of a thing that you clearly see. So I was questioning, why do we need a third sign if you have all the markers of where this church is going to be? But since, you know, Commissioner Alkire found it, after I spent so much wasting time on that, it makes sense now. So there's a need for it. So I'm guessing that some patrons maybe have trouble seeing it, maybe coming through. Having that sign just confirms that it's there. And so that totally makes sense that you're replacing it. And since it's at the highway level and it's a depression, you really can't see that from the street that well. So raising it up so it's more visible totally makes sense. So sign number 3, for those reasons, I think made sense. Sign number 1, you know, is just replacing it on the same spot. That water body is, you know, I would typically play baseball there in Chowan Park. No, what's the name of that park again? Countryside Park. And I would park there, and I would see that sign sometimes. And that little depression where it is, it's not usually filled with water that much, right? And so I see replacing that sign making complete sense as well. So based on what you're trying to do, on the variances that you're asking for, with the elevating the sign to see it from the highway and replacing the signs closer on Olinger, makes sense. And so I'm again in favor of this.
Thank you. Any other comments here? Commissioner Day?
I'll just, I guess, summarize real quick and then probably make a motion. You know, as far as going through each of these signs and the ordinance around signage, nothing here stands out to me as something that would be negatively impact, safety, sight lines, nuisance, et cetera. There's obviously the difficulties in terms of the road grade, so that you want to be able to see the sign, the body of water nearby. Obviously, I think the use of the property is consistent with the comprehensive plan. So in my mind, we fulfill all the necessary requirements for a variance to be granted. And I would motion to approve the requested variances to allow the setback from the ordinary high water elevation of sign 1 to be at least 20 feet and to allow sign 3 to be 14 feet in height.
Second.
Do we have any more comments or discussion?
I said 394, I meant 62. Sorry. Okay.
I guess I just had one comment. I'd likely, in terms of elevating that sign and illuminating it, it just seems like, I don't know, we've had similar things in the past where there's been a double ask like that, and that just makes me a little uncomfortable with the discretion I have. Typically, we don't need to favor illuminating, like for the highway sign.
Is the illumination an ask, or like in terms of something that would be beyond the current sign requirement? I mean, they're backlighting the signage, but this isn't above and beyond. There's nothing restricting them from doing so.
Yeah, so they'd conform to the current.
Right. So the only ask is
that's
the
true.
height variance.
Yeah. All right, I think that's all I needed here. Anything else? All right, and I guess, it was already seconded, so all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Motion carries. Good luck with your project. Thank you. All right, next we have our third and final public hearing. Similar process to the previous. This is for a few requests for 5100 Eden Avenue. Planner Teague, take it away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, members of the commission. This is a site you're familiar with in the Grandview District. It's unique. It's the Eden 100 building, also known as the building on stilts, located on Eden Avenue, just on the west side of Highway 100. So it's a very unique site in that it's surrounded on all four sides with roadways. There's the off-ramp off Vernon and Highway 100, the entry ramp, Eden Avenue, and Arcadia. It's just east of the former Public Works site that sits vacant today. Here's a look at the building. Mainly all paved today. Parking underneath the building. It's guided in the comprehensive plan for a mixed-use center, all this purple area. The current zoning on the site is planned office district. The orange area, the Public Works site to the east, is planned industrial district. To the north, planned commercial district. You may recall this site received a preliminary rezoning from the POD to a PUD. It was for a housing project, and I'll show some slides of what that looks like here in a minute. Same goes for the Public Works site. Preliminary rezoning was granted for that site for the cooperative housing, the restaurant, and a park. Both of those projects did not move forward, so there was no final rezoning. So the existing POD is the zoning on the site. Within the Grandview District Development Framework, also mixed use, and these are some graphics of what was contemplated for possibility of being built on that site. Housing along the street, some renderings with some housing. There was also some thought of Chair Bennett's favorite slide here. But talk of either residential or office on the site as we went through that process. We also did the transportation study in this district. There is a new frontage road planned on the west side of Highway 100. All of that can be accomplished within the existing Highway 100 right-of-way, so there's no additional land needed with this project. Here's a look at the housing project that was approved. It's 6 and 7 stories, 7 stories on one level. There was a little retail space along Arcadia, located right here. Here's a site plan, so that the mass of that building is quite a bit larger than what's being proposed. Also note the setback here. There was a 10-foot setback for this entire length of the building. So here's a look at the proposed structure. So they would tear down that existing building. It's about 38,000 square feet, the existing building, and build this 112,000 square foot office building. There also would be retail space potentially, about 6,000 square feet, potentially a restaurant also, located here on the corner. So note the expanded sidewalks, green space along the roadways. The applicant, as part of their presentation, actually their pictures are a little better than this, so you'll see some enhanced imagery as part of their presentation. Primarily a glass building. Here is a look at the site plan. So with one access off Eden Avenue here, another off of Arcadia. The bulk of the building is set back with that one-story commercial space located here. So this request requires rezoning from Planned Office District to Planned Commercial District 2, a subdivision or new plat. There's 7 lots currently on that site, so they're going to consolidate them into one with a new plat, a site plan, variances on all 4 sides for the building, a variance from our floor area ratio requirement of 2. They're proposing 1.5 is the requirement. They're asking for 2. Variance on height to allow 81 feet. 48 is required. And a variance for the building materials. As I mentioned, it is primarily a glass building. Also a variance for screening and setback requirements for utility equipment. So looking at our pyramid of discretion, this is a rezoning, so the city does have discretion here. Variances and the subdivision, you also have some discretion as well. So I wanted to show the compliance table and compare the proposal with that previously approved PUD. I talked about the setbacks. Setbacks, basically flexibility through the PUD was granted on that project. The previous project was 82 feet tall. This is 81 feet. Building coverage is about the same, a little bit less. The floor area ratio of that previous project was 3.2. This is 2. Parking is code compliant. Even if a restaurant goes into the site, the project would be code compliant for parking spaces. They would meet the first floor building height. There was some flexibility there for the residential building. 13 feet was the first floor. This one would be 20 feet. And again, flexibility on the materials, or a variance. So here is the required setback, the solid red line. So the encroachment into the setback is just these kind of point intrusions into the setback. And in this location here, it's not that solid wall that was previously approved. There's some unique circumstances with this property. All 4 sides with street frontage. We've got the highway frontage to the north and to the east. There's also quite a large right-of-way along Eden. It's about 30 feet. So the building from the road, as you walk or travel down, the building would be set back a little further perception, even though a 2-foot setback is needed right here. It would be 21 feet back from Arcadia. This is a 35-foot requirement here. And the mechanical equipment where a variance is also sought is for this material right here. They are proposing to screen it within the right-of-way. This would need to be approved by MnDOT to allow that screening within the right-of-way, but that's where that variance is located. So primary issues is the rezoning to Planned Commercial District 2. I see a typo there. Is that reasonable? And are the variances justified? So we'll start with the rezoning. Staff does believe that they are, that it meets our criteria for rezoning. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The site is guided mixed-use center. The uses contemplated within that district are all allowed by the PCD2 zoning district. The project would advance comprehensive goals to create a vibrant pedestrian-oriented development in the area. Project would not be detrimental to surrounding property. It would actually benefit some of the commercial areas with more employees during the day. A traffic and parking study was done by Stantec. Ed Terhar, I believe, is on the call with us this evening to answer any questions that you may have. But the study does conclude that the existing roadways can support this project. The roundabouts were all designed with development in mind on this site. I mentioned the FAR is consistent, or it's less than the previously approved plan, but it is consistent with recently approved projects. The Mason Green is 2.5, Avador 2.2, and that senior housing project at 3. The PCD2 zoning is consistent with the properties to the north and northwest. Second issue is in regard to the variances. There's a number of variances proposed here. The staff report included an analysis of each one. I'm not going to go through each of those, but kind of bunch them together in terms of the findings. We do believe that the variances are justified. The property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. There are circumstances that are unique here that I mentioned with the large right-of-way, property, street frontage on all 4 sides, and the project wouldn't alter the essential character of the area. Setbacks are generally consistent with recent proposals and development in the area. The Avador project is actually 4 feet, and the graphic here indicates from Eden Avenue, that's from the property line. There's a 4-foot setback there. The former public works site, that was approved at 5 feet on Eden and Arcadia, and the previous building for this site was 10 feet. I touched on the mass of the building. The FAR is less than the previous proposal and consistent with recent developments in the district. The height is consistent again with that previous approval on the site and is comparable to some of our recent projects. The Mason Green is 76 feet tall. The project that was approved on the public works site was 83 feet. And again, this one being 82. In terms of the building materials, this is a primarily glass building. So to add brick accents, exchanging a small amount of the metal panels really wouldn't significantly alter the appearance of this building. The intent of that code is to for the city to have high-quality buildings constructed, which this would be. Again, this would be the corporate headquarters for Opus. We talked a little bit about that in the sketch plan. And the intent of the screening setback and the setback for the utility equipment, we really want to screen those uses, and this one is located adjacent to that freeway off-ramp, and they would be adequately screened. So we believe that that variance is reasonable as well. And so staff is recommending approval of the rezoning, the subdivision, the site plan, and the variances. If the planning commission has any issues with any of the variances, you can separate them out, make a separate motion. We can talk about that when we get to that point. But with that, I will stop there, and the applicant also has a presentation and will provide a little more detail.
Thank you, Carrie, for the presentation. Welcome, you guys. If you'd like to just, introduce yourselves, go over your presentation, I think it'd be helpful on the heels of that to just kind of discuss any feedback that's been incorporated since last time, both from the Planning Commission and City Council, and share anything new, stuff you've learned, what makes this more compelling. And thank you again.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Director Teague, Chair Bennett, Commissioners. Great to be in front of you all again on this site. I counted, I think this is the 7th time we've been up here on this site. So excited to share some of the changes that we made, as you suggested, Chair Bennett. We've had our neighborhood meeting, obviously our sketch plan, both Planning Commission as well as Council, took some feedback and took your comments and what we heard and have made some changes. So we were going to run through some of those changes from the first time that we were here. I realize I didn't introduce myself. Nick Merdan with Opus. Nice to see you all again. Bob Loken and Matt Axman with ESG as well. We are going to run through some of those changes from sketch plan, and then we were going to touch on, we had worked with city staff on a handful of other variances that we had that I think all of them actually are off of there now. So just some changes that they helped us make that some smaller variances we were able to eliminate. So I think with that, I'll turn it over to Matt just to run through some of the architectural changes from our blocking diagram to our building today.
Yeah, a little bit different looking building from the last time you had seen it. So really, I think that the kind of primary comments at sketch plan were this emphasis on Arcadia and really kind of celebrating that in the pedestrian realm and really kind of amping that up a little bit. So a big part of it was shifting the building and the podium itself to really increase that setback along Arcadia. We shifted that podium piece 17 feet inward, and then the building kind of proper as it kind of touches the ground was also inset 4 feet. That also allowed us to create this sort of recessed level 1 frontage along Arcadia. There's this sort of arcade breezeway that expands itself into a wraparound porch that is part of this podium condition here. There's also balconies added at the southwest corner. Again, we really wanted to kind of celebrate Arcadia, strengthen the connections, activity, and vibrancy along Arcadia. And then obviously articulated all the facades with specific building materials. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but mixed use of glass, metal panel, shading fins. This next site plan, which was also in the previous presentation, but we moved the front door onto Arcadia as well. We talked a little bit last time about creating that porosity and that connection directly on Arcadia. We also moved what was some surface parking stalls 20 feet away from that property line, alleviating the variance that we had kind of worked through with staff. And then additionally, if you can kind of see it at letter H there, that is the new proposed location of our loading dock. So the vehicles will actually be tucked under the building, so out of public view. So that was also one that we were able to kind of work through with staff. And then also we shifted the sidewalk inward a little bit. Oh, there you go. Shifted the sidewalk inward a little bit to really create an opportunity for some site trees along the edge there, which currently don't exist. But in doing so, with the building shifting, we still had ample space between the building and the sidewalk to really celebrate the groundscape and really, hopefully some of these renderings will show it, have some really unique landscape elements. So this one is just really quickly just to kind of talk through what is the design concept summary. So overall, the building massing is relatively simple. It's this portion in green here is kind of sliding in and being tucked under the building proper. And just so that we're all kind of talking the same lexicon, we started naming this the dock. It kind of represents this, it's a more natural material when we see it in the renderings, and it kind of juts out onto almost like a body of water within this sort of sea of greenery. And we really like the idea of celebrating the sort of Minnesota ties with this dock reference. And then again, still celebrating the building on stilts or the Palo-T from the previous building. And then when it comes to landscapes, we've worked with Damon Farber and our whole team to really start to kind of dive into what is the planting palette, intermixing shrubs, pollinators, tall grasses, and creating a little bit of color and variance in the landscaping. And again, the additional setbacks from sketch plan that we had worked through with your team really allowed us to really celebrate the landscape here and create more opportunities for those pollinators and create a little bit of kind of color in the landscape. We've also still proposed a kind of an area of respite at the crest of the pocket park, so to speak, here with this seated bench element that's pulled off from the roundabout to allow for a little bit more safety from the road. This rendering just showcases the topography as it moves north to south, so you can kind of really see the topography as it drops off and the dock element as it sort of protrudes out into the space. Here is the primary entry. Again, we relocated the door to be on Arcadia itself so that we can celebrate the Arcadia streetscape as an opportunity to kind of pull people in. And then additionally, once you're up on that breezeway, you can make your way all the way across onto that elevated terrace. Here's a view of the north side from the frontage road. And then lastly here, just kind of our hero shot of this dock element coming out, what could be a really celebrated space with beautiful landscaping and hopefully a great asset to the residents of Edina.
I think that's everything. So we are open to comments, questions, and here to answer any questions you have.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice seeing you guys come back so soon. Sometimes it's a long period of time between sketch plan and formal application, so we're hoping something successful goes there. Any questions for the applicant team or Carrie? Right now would be the time.
I had one for Carrie. Do you know how tall the stilt building is currently?
I do not.
Greater than or less than what they're proposing?
It should be less than.
It's definitely, okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Padilla.
Nice to see you gentlemen again. So thank you for all that additional information. It looks like a beautiful building. There was a lot of discussion in the work that we looked at about how close you are to transit. And there was, most of the information said it was 1/4 of a mile, and I understand that that gives you, lets you change the parking numbers as a function of how close you are to transit. But then in the transportation memo, it said that it was 1/2 a mile. So I was wondering, do we know, is it 1/4 a mile or 1/2 a mile? And the second part of that question is there adequate pedestrian access to the transit stop that is impacting the number of parking spaces? Betty, anybody?
Well, I'm seeing 1/4 mile just on Google Maps.
On Google Maps, okay, because the transportation memo, which is,
I believe it's 1/4 mile, but we'll have to check on that.
It's just off Eden by the library.
okay, so I'll assume it's 1/4 of a mile, and that was just maybe a misprint in the transportation memo. So it would be across from the roundabout then? They'd have to walk by the roundabout to get over to the bus stop by the library?
No, they just, you could walk the north side of Eden right to it.
Wouldn't that depend upon which direction you were going?
I guess, well, yeah, I guess you'd cross the roundabout, but the north side of the roundabout.
Okay. And it mentioned that you're going to be the lead tenant in the building. Do you have any idea about how much space you'd be occupying and how much you'd be looking to lease out?
Yeah, we would lease about 30% or so, give or take. So likely a building that would have, it depends on the overall tenant mix, but I could see maybe 4 or 5 others. We do have a lot of preliminary interest, which has been great. So, you know,
That's terrific.
Yeah.
In terms of like building materials, why glass? Why so much glass? How do you make that determination? Is that a function of utilities or exposure or cost or?
Sure, from the development standpoint, and I'll certainly let the architects weigh in as well, the all-glass facade from a leasability standpoint within the office space is certainly the most desirable. That space is what people want, a lot of natural light. You're seeing a lot of office spaces transformed since COVID, and you're seeing a lot of more open functional spaces that are kind of neighborhoods, they typically call them, with inboard offices. And when you have a lot of glass on the exterior, you're able to get a lot of that light into the center core of the building. So really you can illuminate the whole floor and create a much better work environment from a leasability standpoint.
And I think too, just when we kind of talked a little bit on the massing diagram, I think what makes this building successful is the juxtaposition of the component that is kind of protruding out from underneath the building and then the building itself. So we really celebrated more, call it filigree or more opacity at the podium element, our dock, so to speak, and then letting the building proper be more glassy so that we can really create a nice juxtaposition between those two elements. And then additionally, just to contribute to the sustainability aspect of an all-glass building, both east and west sides will have horizontal shading fins. You can kind of see them in this elevation. You see them a little bit more here, so that when you get that warm western summer sun, you'll get some reprieve within the building.
Okay. And there was an article, I'm not sure if you saw it in today's, I think it was today's Business Journal, about potentially, the city of Edina having to kind of bail out the construction project that's on the corner of 70th Street. That causes some of us, some great concern in terms of moving forward with these projects. So with particularly the cost of construction materials and glass in particular, what kind of assurance can you provide that this is going to work economically?
Good question. We have studied that. This will be our headquarters. We need space by the end of next year. We will be moving forward with this, assuming that we get through the entitlement process. We've run the returns and the math on our end, and we're confident with the building that we've proposed today. There are factors that we looked at. We looked at a bigger building, a smaller building, more parking, less parking, really kind of dialed into what the market demands are of today, and we feel comfortable with this project moving forward. And we do not have a TIF ask out to the city for this project, so we will be fully moving forward private financed.
Okay, thanks.
Is that it, Bonnie? Bonnie, do you have any more?
No.
Okay. Any other questions for, yeah? Okay, we'll just keep going down there. Commissioner Alakar.
Thanks for coming again this evening. Can you go back to that west elevation? Yeah, that one. So it looks like, well, first, let me back up. The first image you showed had a tapas restaurant. Is that just a placeholder, or is that?
That's a placeholder, yes.
Okay, so it's a step up from tenant.
Yeah,
You're
tenant
getting more
signage kind of
specific.
drives us nuts.
We had a conversation about, we don't like when it just says tenant, so we threw
Okay, tapas is a good choice. Okay,
Come on.
so here we're on the west elevation. The doors under the Arcadia word seem to be the only pedestrian entrance to the building. Is that right?
Jump to the site plan. That is the main pedestrian entrance is going to happen here, as you suggest. We also maintained a door to the north here so that you'd have a drop-off area if somebody was, say, taking an Uber. There could also be, there's likely to be a door somewhere where we break from the lobby to the retail commercial. And then there also is kind of a more back-of-house entrance. That one I wouldn't count as a typical pedestrian entrance, but if somebody's parking here, they could come in that way because we may have a direct access to that restaurant there as well.
But if I'm coming in from Eden, I would have to walk in with cars, right?
Correct.
Because where F is basically it's a parking lot entrance.
That is correct. Yes.
So if I'm walking up, truly, like if I come over there and park at the district parking, walk across the bridge on foot, I'm going to come in the main door.
Yep.
Okay, can we look at the west elevation again? So where about would that other door that you just mentioned be? It would be at
There's
the
actually going to
intersection?
be 2 more doors, just because for some egress, like right where that cursor is now, there'll be an additional entry into the lobby space, and then there'll also be an additional door to the right of that for the commercial space on grade. So there'll be 3 points of entry on that.
Okay.
And also just to note that the intent of this is that if you were going to the commercial retail space, you still would also be able to use the main office entrance. The idea is the office lobby is open to the public and open to the restaurant space. So your security checkpoint to get into the office is just before the elevator. So the idea is that this is really all public space lobby area that flows into a restaurant.
Okay, what I was mainly wondering about is like, I understand I can go in that door, but the side of the building, it seems like it should tell me pretty clearly where I'm supposed to go in, and I wasn't clear about that. It looks, from what, on that drawing, it looks like I'm supposed to go in the main door, because I didn't see any other doors.
Sure, yeah, I think this, we've got the landscaping here. You're likely going to have tenant signage.
Right, and there'll be a restaurant door over there, which looks like a restaurant door.
Right.
Okay, I think that's pretty important. So second, related question, if I'm on my bike, where am I going to access the site?
So if you're an employee of the office, we have a bike room here. And then we're exploring locations for public bike stalls. We had parking here before that needed to be set back 20, so it scooted over. I think we wanted to explore some bike parking here, and then also looking at some of the kind of bike corrals right at the front door somewhere.
Okay, so likely both on Eden and Arcadia?
Yes, that would be the intent.
And something else to note too, is that those 4 parking stalls to the left of F there are likely going to be temporary parking stalls only. And so the intention would be if you're walking or biking, for instance, you have a relatively safe pathway. Once you get up the kind of secondary entry piece there, the whole dark green space would be paved. And so you can get to that vestibule and that bike room without having to traverse vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for being here. Yeah, this is my second meeting, so I was not here at the last time, so nice to meet y'all. While I'm new to the commission, I've got a fair amount of history with the Grandview area. As I peruse the people that were on the plan, that small area plan or Grandview plan area, Grandview area plan, I think the only commissioner that was on that at the time. So we talked, we talked for, I don't know, it seemed like years on that plan. So we had a lot of vision for it. Obviously, that rendering we saw earlier showed housing. It wasn't locked in at housing or anything, but so I think I do like a few things about this. I don't want to get real negative or anything, but the fact that this office is great. I like bringing 300 or several hundred people into the area, help support Grandview and the folks that are there. The other businesses that are there, kind of like the dock, that whole walking area, the front area, where you have the little seating and then what you call the dock coming out and all the planting. The landscaping really looks nice. It's nice to have the welcoming door on Arcadia. Initially, I didn't, looking around, I didn't see that, and then as you look at that elevation, you did see that, so that was nice. The one thing we talked about pretty at length on this site was that this is the one location in Grandview where height really seemed to be, it wasn't a bad thing. I mean, could have gone, my feeling was that this site could support. We always talked about going up to the height of the Jerry's Tower, that as being kind of the maximum. And I don't know what that ended up being, if it was like 10 or 11 stories. It seems like that was what it was. And again, that's fine. You didn't go all the way up. It seems like it could have gone up a little bit higher. Just, number one, it's a little bit of a buffer to the freeway. and it's a low site, so it's the lowest site on the property, except for the former Public Works land. So again, it could have gone higher. Again, you did your study to figure out what size is there. My thought was that the footprint could have been a little bit smaller, height gone up, but again, you have your reasons for making the footprint the size it is. The building materials, not a huge fan of that glass. I kind of understand what you're saying about tenants and liking to see out and having the natural light come in. And glass is fine. It's just that there's a lot of glass, and there's not a lot of the materials that we kind of had in that Grandview area plan. The stone, the brick. And again, on the first level, there's a little bit more of that. The other piece that concerns me a little bit is the back toward the garage areas. Of course, there's concrete in the garage because that's what you're driving on, but those panels, some of those panels look like they're concrete precast or some sort of concrete panels. They might be colored, they might not be. Again, it seems like an area that you could add stone or add some kind of flavor to that would pick up the appearance of the building a little bit. Seems a little, and again, I'm not that familiar with it. It seems a little overparked, in my opinion. How many levels does it go down?
We go down 2 and up 1. So the parking is driven primarily by the market needing three per thousand for the office.
Yeah, and I guess the thought was when we went through the plan is that the Jerry's lot, the ramp over there, again, it's a block and a half away, 2 blocks maybe, was kind of thought to pick up some of that excess needed parking. But again, I went through your numbers and I see that you have the 330 spots. Again, you're going to need the two down and 1 up at least. But again, I think you could have made it a little bit smaller and gone a little taller, in my opinion. But that's where you're at today. Yeah, it's just the concrete. We've got a couple ramps in town that made it through this and the council and got built that aren't the prettiest in town. I mean, I'm thinking of the Southdale Medical Office Building ramp that they threw up. They made a little bit of detail on it, and then the Galleria ramp. 2 pretty poor looking ramps, in my opinion. Again, ramps are ramps, and there's a lot of concrete usually, so you're not getting a real beautiful product out of it. But there are things that could be done to it, and again, that's where I'm kind of coming with that. Some other appearance, at least at the entrance, or something to show that stone or brick, in my opinion, would be nice. And again, maybe carrying it up through elements of the building and either columns or somehow showing that. And really that, I mean, I went on and on. I read through this a few nights ago, and the renderings, I think, it seemed like you saw renderings from the freeway somewhere. I don't know if you had those or it gave me it looked like a cut off IDS tower, a shrunk down glass building that didn't really fit the area. I mean, across the way, we've got the brand new residential building that's there. Just over here, which they put a lot of effort into what they did for finishes. Yeah, that one. Again, I guess that's just my comment. The materials, the height could have been different. The mass is it appears to be so massive on the site, at least from here. It's just a few thoughts I have on it. Again, I like the fact that there's office being proposed to go in here. I really like this pedestrian area and the idea of having a little bit of retail in there to help support the folks that are in there. So really, I'll just leave it at that. I didn't want to ramble on forever, but I've made a lot of notes, and I want to try to start with some of the positive there. That, yeah, where you got the entrance, and that just looks to be, you know, plain concrete panels, as does, and that might, I'm not sure what the top is there. It looks like the same. Now those might be metal panels there.
Yeah.
But again, if you know that material could change, be my vote. But thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Could you speak to the material of those? Like, what can you confirm what it is and availability to change, or?
So the material you're seeing on the Dana White, there you go. That is the same metal panel that is on the building above. So the idea of not letting that be like a stone or a brick material, for instance, is that we really wanted the building to feel like it touched the ground, to create some grounding elements in the building. So we felt that in drawing a line, so to speak, and having the bottom portion be brick, we are kind of further creating like a podium building, whereas we really wanted to celebrate this as an opportunity to touch the ground with material, the building above.
And I guess to follow up on that, what is the material of the dock that we're seeing?
So we are currently studying a whole bunch of materials for that. The idea is that this is like a wood look material. We're looking at phenolic product, which is like a high pressure laminate. We're looking at real veneer sheets that are pressed with polycarbonate. We're looking at some actually recycled wood fibers that are on an aluminum core, so that one would actually feel like real wood. And then additionally, metal panel that is a wood look metal panel as well. We're kind of running the gamut right now on pricing various options.
I guess going down, yeah. Any questions for?
So did you guys have any precedents for the building?
In terms of other buildings?
Yeah.
I think that the dock portion really kind of was stemmed from a more Scandinavian style. If you look at buildings there, specifically with the louvers, and the sort of light tone wood is certainly a more Scandinavian gesture. And then the building above, again, just kind of playing a little bit with the Scandinavian materials. So one thing that maybe isn't super apparent, but those fins, those vertical fins, are clad with a similar material as the dock itself. See if I can find a good image. There you go. And then additionally, for, again, some solar control, there is a horizontal fin that goes all the way around that slab edge condition, and that is also of that same material type. So in lieu of it being just a gray metal panel, we're like bringing in these accents and these ribbons of that wood look material as well. And then obviously the underside of the soffit.
It reminded me of the John Deere building in Moline, Illinois.
Oh.
Vernon, especially the one elevation, the really long, massive elevation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I looked it up today because it was so I'm like same number of stories, same kind of metal. So it reminded me a lot of that. I'm actually okay with all of the open glass. I do want to ask about lighting though, making sure that any kind of ceiling lighting or,
Yeah, all of the lighting will be on occupancy sensors.
Okay.
So specifically, in the evening when folks aren't working, all the lights will shut down.
Okay. And then like when people are driving up and down the street, or especially 100, that everything is kind of shielded. So
In terms of reflectivity?
Yeah.
Yeah. Our generally base spec is going to be something somewhat low reflective so that we don't have to worry about, sunshine kind of blinding cars. So
Okay.
This will certainly not be a mirrored building from the 80s. We assure.
Okay. So how many employees? 30%? You think you're going to have 30% of the
Yeah, give or
floor
take,
plate?
yeah, about 30,000 feet.
How many employees are going to be within a few miles?
Within a few miles. Oh, I'd have to pull that number. I know the majority of our employee base is all Southwest. Most of the 105, call it employees, I'd say it must be over 75% are within 3 or 4 miles.
So I'm going to bring up the biking again.
Sure.
Right? Because and I asked you last time about the biking. If I biked here to go to the tapas restaurant, because I would go to a tapas restaurant.
Sure.
I'm going to go behind City Hall, and I'm going to go on the south side, and I'm going to park in the back, and I'm going to go in the back doors.
Yes.
Just letting you know that.
Yeah, we had a long conversation about that and making
Okay.
sure that this entrance is not a back of house entrance and that it feels, you know, I feel like I've used the Bridgewater Bank and Hazelwood example quite a bit, and they have, you know, a couple different access points to their office building, and I think this is similar in that way where you're going to have people coming from a few different parts of the community, because, you know, similar to that one, if someone's coming from Minnetonka Vista and walking there, it's a different experience than if they're coming from the back. And
Yeah.
similar to this, we want people to be able to come through kind of the F area, if you will, on this plan, and still feel that kind of welcome presence as they come in and be part of the public realm and not be in back of house where deliveries are.
Yeah, yeah, or like right in the restaurant itself rather than through the office building or something. Okay. So I think a little bit more porosity would be great there. I'm going to go back to the bikes again. Your parking decks are flat. Would you ever consider converting, right? Because if we kind of add any kind of bike infrastructure along France or 50th or Vernon, which I would love, and people were biking a little bit more, I think it'd be great if we could, right, adjust the parking.
Yeah, it's a flat plate. At one point, we had a bike room on the north area, which I think would be another natural area if we felt we needed more. The bike room currently is down in this corner.
Okay.
We certainly could pretty easily add
Okay.
an area there.
You've got the capability of doing it. I would love it if that happened. Okay. The other one I want to talk to you about, the variance for the 200-foot. Do you have a view from the northwest? You've got a view from the northeast.
I believe we have a northwest, maybe in the city presentation, is there one?
Which elevations are you asking for the variance for the 200 feet?
Yeah, it's both north and south. The north elevation, I think, is 212. Yeah. And then the south elevation is 205 feet long. So both of those are just over the 200.
Can you bring those up?
You can kind of see it here. That's the north.
Otherwise, you probably have to do the actual elevation.
Oh, sure. There you go.
Yeah, that's the north. That was the northeast.
I think it's the next one, right? This one. So that's
And
that's the north elevation.
Okay.
Top image. So that's I believe that's the longest run, is what you were referring to.
And the south elevation has those balconies on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And those, for me, break up that 200 feet. So you're really close to the 200 feet.
Sure.
Would you consider doing balconies on that northwest corner? No, the northeast is the highway. The northwest is over the.
You know,
Would that?
we've looked at that at one point. You know, they were trying to keep a relatively square plate for rentability and for
Right.
what we see in the market. And we also have seen some instances, and I won't name buildings, where balconies on highways are empty all the time. They get
Not
no
on the
use.
highway.
Oh, you were saying
on the
facing
west.
on the,
Not on the northeast, on the
west.
northwest.
Oh, I see.
I feel like it, just given the size of those plates, it might be a little over balconied for if you were to compare interior space versus exterior space.
Yeah, it makes me a little nervous to chop up the plate. Again, you know, taking out the one corner, I think, was manageable. I think if we started doing it again, it would be challenging.
Yeah, because that's the only one, the 200-foot uninterrupted, more than 200-foot that's there for a reason. So that's the variance that I'm having a little bit more trouble with. I don't have trouble with any of the other variances. And one of the reasons and I'll talk about this in comments, I don't have to talk about it now. And then tell me about the screening for the.
For the, the transformer.
Yeah,
So,
that transformer.
That was one, unfortunately, that's where the power comes in, and that's where Excel is requiring we have the transformer.
You've got no choice there.
Yeah, so I'm trying to find the best angle. I don't know if it catches it there.
Yeah, it would be kind of here.
Yeah, but maybe, Matt, do you want to talk about the actual screening of it?
Yeah, sure. We're kind of, currently focused on a couple of options, be it an aluminum screening element or, potentially it's a material akin to what the dock is doing so that we have some continuity with materials.
Okay.
And bringing that wood look over there might be a nice opportunity versus it just being a painted aluminum.
Good, so you're thinking through that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it for my questions. Thank you. I think it's
Thank you.
a handsome building.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Hanneman.
So these images are really helpful. I wish I'd seen them and been able to digest them in our packet a little bit. But lacking that, I went back to the 2023 proposal with the building, and I'm trying to compare different visuals of what we had last time, what was approved with the apartments, and then what I understood about what was before me. And I guess it would be, the last 2 years I went back and rewatched all the videos, the consistent comment has been activation and engagement on the west side. I think there was even some questions when you did the apartment, which opened up to the west. Was that enough? So I guess I'm having trouble, and maybe you can explain why we can't orient the public space more to the north and west. Because I think Chair Bennett had even mentioned, we don't care about the setback on the highway side, push it that direction, push the height. Why can't we preserve some of that space on the west for that engagement, since this is supposed to be the jewel box and the entrance into Grandview?
I think kind of two things for that. One of them is our stormwater mitigation strategy. Our stormwater, really the only place we could get it to fit was on the east side. So there's a limitation on how much we can shove our building east. We did it as far as we possibly could the last go around to get the additional space.
Because of depth underground, or what do you mean?
No, we can only locate it within our property. So we've put the stormwater tanks as far east as possible, and the building. So we've moved that building. We moved the entire building about 3 or 4 feet, and then in addition, when we set the first floor back, the interesting thing to note is that at the first floor, the portion that is set back actually complies with the 35-foot setback requirement along Arcadia. Somewhat of a happy accident. But yeah, so I think what we were trying to do is we were totally embracing the idea of activating and engaging Arcadia. I think the amount of vegetation and the amount of relief we have from the street is, I think it is going to be welcoming. But at the same time, we really wanted to define that street edge, and we're thinking ahead of what might be developed across the street, and really embracing the idea that this might feel like an outdoor room with framed by buildings on both sides.
I think one of the biggest challenges we saw on the housing portion when we tried to kind of do a park over there as well, for those maybe who remember, was it was starting to feel very difficult to maintain a grade with the grade change from the north to the south. All of a sudden, the park was starting to feel like it was going to be very hardscaped, a lot of steps down and a lot of concrete. So that's another challenge that we have, is just that grade from north to south. I think it was 20 feet, 18 feet, something in that range, maybe even more than that. So there was a challenge to try to create something here. Do you kind of cut into that hill, and not, if you do anything wider than 5 feet, you're stepping and you're stepping and you're stepping, and it just didn't feel like it was going to work very well on that west side.
And then just something to note that we hadn't talked about previously was that if you see the steps that are kind of directly below the Arcadia signage, is to the right of that, there's a series of sort of cascading benches as well. So there's a seating element there. And then everything up on the breezeway, there's going to be some public seating up on that as well.
Yeah, that's probably a good note if you look at the floor plan. Just sharing that, that one part of the arcade is more public than private. Yeah, Just that, yeah, there you go. That area, you know, before you get to the restaurant space, if it is a restaurant that hopefully has outdoor seating, that's more of a public area. That's kind of, as Matt mentioned, up the bench and up the stairs there.
Got it. Going back a little bit just to the storm water, just for my own edification, if the green space was on the west side, the stormwater tank couldn't go under that?
It could, and originally we put it there, but then we learned that we can't have trees there, and it occupied so
okay.
much, we really...
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Got it. The sidewalks are smaller here now, right? They're all down to 8 feet. Okay. I wanted to reiterate the comments of Commissioner Nelson. I emailed Carrie just the other day driving down 62 at that Optum and UHG buildings. Those were not from the 80s, and those are pretty glary. So I do have a real concern. I mean, it's beautiful, but it is right next to a highway. So not that I don't believe you, but those buildings weren't built 50 years ago, and they were still, you know, you're doing this while you drive in the morning. So,
and I think it's you know, working with you folks as well. Like we've heard it now a couple of times, and we know that from a creature comfort perspective inside the building, you don't really want to have a highly reflective building because you don't get as much visible light transmission through the glass. So I think we're kind of at least collectively on board with doing less reflective glass.
But I guess I would also, I think, at least I've observed buildings during certain times of day. I think there's really almost nothing you can do about glare with a certain angle from windows. And I've observed this even with buildings that are primarily opaque with punched windows. You'll still get that glare, and it can still be a little blinding.
well, absolutely. And you can't build any building just for one moment in time on, you know, 1 week of the year. But it feels like a very suburban office building, beautiful as it may be. It doesn't seem to have the quasi-urban, walkable neighborhood kind of vibe because of so much glass. It feels very modern that way, and so I would just challenge whether or not we need quite so much, at least facing the highway. I think all my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Forgot to mention, I do think you solved that southwest corner elegantly, the sidewalk. Doing a little place to a respite place there was nice.
Thank you.
I just have a quick, so what are you guys hearing about, like, interest, you know, from tenants? Not who specifically, but like what type of business, or what type of situation would a company, you know, be in where they'd want to move into this building? Like, what situation are they coming from, and what are they looking for?
Yeah, I think.
And what size are they, and that type of thing? I'm just curious, like, what type of tenants this might attract, under what circumstance?
No, it's a good question. We've kind of seen all across the board, whether it's kind of either financial groups or real estate groups, or kind of a wide array. But I think you're seeing in some of the larger tenants that are looking, they're typically actually downsizing. They were maybe in 80s or 90s office buildings with floor plates that didn't work anymore, and they're going from 40 or 50,000 down to the 25,000 square foot plate because they can be so much more efficient than they used to be. So I think we're starting to see that a little bit. You know, I think that it's typically we're seeing a flight to quality for folks that are moving, that there's pretty high demand for new office, and there's not a lot of new office. And then, of course, being in Edina is a huge win for a lot of corporations. So I know the Craftsman down on France has seen some great interest as well. They've already signed a handful of tenants there that wanted to be in Edina, wanted new construction. And if you want new construction and you want to be in Edina, your choices are fairly limited.
Yeah, and with you guys, or just with Opus, and all the just interest you're seeing, are these people coming from industries where people are working in the office now, you know, and not working from home? Or, you know, I know there's been some shifting around on that concept, but like, do you envision this being full of people, like all day, throughout the week,
yeah.
or?
I think the investment that those tenants would make, we typically ask that question of, how often are your employees in the
Yeah.
week? And I think across the board, we've heard, the least we've heard is 4 days a week, and the majority we've heard 5.
Okay.
But I think this is the type of asset that if the company's making the investment in it, they've got the employees that'll be there.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I'll just say, Matt and I, officing in North Loop Green, brand new, high quality office building. It's now, I think, maybe 70% occupied, and it's populated. Yeah. That fitness room is getting nuts.
All right, welcome back. Most of my questions have been answered already, but I'll hit on something a little differently. The rooftop patio and how that's sketched out. So I've seen it portrayed a few different ways. There being an arbor up there being just that corner, the roof. What is your vision for that in terms of who uses that, how often, access to there, et cetera, and why is the footprint limited to, say, just that corner of the rooftop?
Sure, I can start with the use. About 2/3 of that patio, maybe even more, maybe 3/4 would be for all of the building tenants. So it's a kind of a shared communal space that would likely be attached inside to other amenities, whether that's fitness or kind of a club room feature. And then there's a small portion, maybe a quarter of it, that we did reserve for one of the tenants on that floor, so that if a tenant did want a larger outdoor patio, they'd have that as well. The size, we've started to program it, and I think I'll let them speak to exiting and code, yeah. But felt like the right size for the size of the building. As we started to program what would the uses be out there, some grilling areas, some outdoor seating. Code-wise, I assume there's also a function of not needing another exit.
Yeah, it's kind of twofold with needing another exit and just travel distance back to it within the building. I will say that this image is depicting a more conservative size. I think in reality, we're probably there and then all the way across. Obviously subject to change based on our code and life safety review, but it will likely get larger, and it's all going to depend on the depth it goes away from the building and the travel distance back inside the building.
Okay, so you'd be limited, essentially, do you think, by code, by actually, like if you were to have that entire surface area covered by patio in terms of being able to get back into, okay.
Yeah, I think when we looked at it, I think you'd even have to look at, an exterior stair that comes off the building to straight out, as opposed to going back through the path of travel inside.
Okay.
Well, and I think, it may look like a small area here, but when we've started to program it, you can fit a lot of stuff up there. We've got a game lawn, we've got a grill, we've got bar area, lounge area, fire pit. It feels pretty generous.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Other questions? You don't have any? Yeah, I think most were answered. Thanks again for coming back. Great presentation. Just getting back to kind of that east side, it'll feel some of my comments. I feel like there is opportunity there, but regardless of what you do and how you treat stormwater, one of the ideas with previous project, and kind of answer some of this like navigation, it's like if you're biking or walking and you're coming from the east, but you want to go north. Is there a reason that you guys didn't consider continuing the sidewalk around that north side of the building down to Eden? There's kind of like just a swath of just landscape, and for infiltration, if you're serving, everything coming in through pipes, you can cover that in a sidewalk, no problem. Is there a reason?
I think a bold, intrepid user who's familiar with the building might use that route, but it struck us the fact that it is parking. There aren't active uses. There aren't eyes on the street. It just seemed like a liability to invite pedestrians to go on that those invisible sides of the building. And what we did is what we wanted to do was just put all our eggs in the basket of enriching Eden and Arcadia and inviting people to circulate that way. you do have to go through a little more grade change. You have to go down and go up. One of the things we did study, which we heard about in the sketch plan review, was to try to short circuit some of that grade. But what we realized is since we need to hit those existing crosswalks, we couldn't minimize that grade change.
We did slightly.
Yeah, slightly, yes.
Yeah, we tried to bring it away from the roundabout. We had heard either at Planning Commission or Council of the kind of, the roundabout, when you're right next to it, feels a little dangerous as, you're coming around that corner. I know we had that sidewalk before. I think we were really trying to celebrate the more grand sidewalk. I think, long term, if the frontage road that has been discussed ever does go in however many years, you'd certainly have the ability to add it.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking, like, in this built circumstance, like on day one, I just can't imagine like why someone would circulate along the east and north. Like, it seems like I don't know if that it's actually a shortcut to get anywhere, but.
Oh yeah, I mean, just distance-wise, it's shorter and there's no elevation change. So, I mean, you think of people who use an urban area, if they're going to commute, they're going to take the shortest route possible, and without it available, you're inviting people through the building and the parking instead if they're going to try to cut it off. And I think that's a wrong, result of, like, you don't want that. Maybe in the winter people want to do that walking, you're walking through covered space, but now again, you're just inviting people to kind of walk through the parking area versus, right, because you still have stilts. It's still like open right on that east side.
It is, yep.
So yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like you're, I guess, walking along a wall. It's kind of open. So I was curious, and again, I wouldn't care about that if that building was shifted all the way east and took all that space out of there. But now that you're leaving it there, there's definitely more to be desired. We want to just keep maintaining 4 sides of a building, even if it's like against a highway, like it just offers more mobility and kind of maybe provides other options of, like, maybe you prefer to park your bike on that north side and whatever. You make it easier to get. Yeah, you want to tie on to that?
Yeah, just to add on to what Jimmy was sharing here, I know at some of the buildings, what they actually do is they use those walk around the buildings as a walking meeting. So typically you have a meeting in an office room, you kind of book a room, but then what I see a lot of managers do now is they use these spaces outside to hold their meetings. So you do your one-on-ones while you walk. So that's just an idea of an amenity or a value that you can give your tenants, that they could walk around the building and hold meetings.
Sure. And I think part of it too is trying to bring the energy candidly to Arcadia and trying to not put it on in between a parking garage and a highway. There's a whole bunch of buckthorn there today. I don't think it's going to be a great experience over there. Trying to bring the energy and bring all of that to Arcadia, where hopefully the public RFP site, gets developed, and hopefully the area continues to develop, and we've got a really nice boulevard along Arcadia with some of those changes that we're looking at.
It's a maybe last question. It's kind of piggybacks what Commissioner Felt said, but could you go back to the west elevation? I feel like when you see this side of the building, just mass-wise, it's a bit more digestible and kind of, let's just say, matches maybe some more of the intent of the framework, which was kind of smaller masses and getting taller, along the freeway, which we talked about, and how you guys kind of decided, to turn it the other way. But I guess seeing the one north elevation, I definitely do have concerns of, without, one side being taller than the other, it is just a really long, continuous run of sameness. So, like, if we were to not approve that variance, for instance, like, what kind of design features come to mind that you could break up without significantly increasing cost, just so we have an idea of what could be feasible? don't want to just say no and then not have an option for you.
I
Just
think it'd be something we'd have to study right now, because I think given the kind of purity of the massing as it is, there's not a easy button, so to speak. You know, there's always the idea of just shifting the glass box to be kind of two offset glass boxes, but I think from an architectural perspective, we'd want to vet to make sure that that's not just arbitrary, and it both functions on the interior and it functions a purpose on the exterior aside from just breaking it up. You know, one thing just to quickly note is that first portion of that parking on the north side does push out, so there is some depth relief from the call it the podium condition to the building proper, but yeah.
I'm sorry, did you just say it pushes, like the front of those cars is open to the sky?
Correct. There's a portion of that mesh, the tips of the tops of cars there. Obviously, we're going to block headlights, so those won't be visible. But yes, that portion of the podium does push out. You can see it in plan actually as well. There, see where that dark line? Oh, I can do this here. That's the building above. Is this dark gray box here?
And was there a reason you did that beside aesthetics?
It also was a parking efficiency as well. We were utilizing the site in order to get another depth of vehicle there.
And a bit of the setback as well. Otherwise, you'd bring the building all the way back
Right.
out, and then you'd have a solid wall up 81 feet there.
Right.
And I think, you know, we certainly can study. We knew that this one would come up with the length on the north. My concern is that we're going to break it up just to break it up. And if we have to, we can certainly look at it. But, you know, we're really close. I think we're 212 and it's 200. Candidly, we're probably going to end up with a jog that's just a jog to not have that variance. You know, we would look at the architecture, of course, and try to find something that obviously works well. You know, is it again looking at balconies? I don't think that's the right answer, but
so from that other elevation, you do have a stairwell that kind of sticks up only to serve the first level?
It's a transfer condition.
Okay. Just thinking, you know, maybe there's something you can carry that up. I definitely have a hang up with not shifting the building east. And so one of the questions that I'm just still thinking about is, you know, sometimes with the stormwater mitigation, you know, it can get like buried under a portion of the building, you know, and you sacrifice some parking and, you know, you have your foundation wall kind of over to one side. Was any of that considered to kind of maximize? Because I just see this and I think this is really great, but the next step better is, again, to get more space on that west side. And kind of in line with the, you know, the Southfield design experience guidelines, as well as the Grandview framework of, you know, that notion of stepping the building back. Because again, as I see it, you're coming down Arcadia and you have a 5-story building right next to you. And just stepping back that first level, I feel like you guys kind of did the opposite in one way, but improved it for half the building, you know, where you have that balcony for the main level stick out. But now it's kind of stuck under the building. When you're walking there, it's going to feel really tall. 'Cause, I mean, you're right up against a 5-story building. And getting back to the framework, you know, a lot of that density and height is calling to be on the freeway. So I'm okay with it coming over, but being right up next to the sidewalk without much relief, it has more left to be desired, I'd say. So like just trying to understand of like why you tucked the dock in versus brought it out and pushed the building over instead.
Yeah, I mean, the move of sort of tucking the dock in, what we realized is the impediment to getting access to multiple points along the west is that steeply sloping street. It's very hard to get multiple points of entry on a steeply sloping street. So this allowed us to sort of create a secondary street that's parallel to the sidewalk on Eden, but is level, and then allows multiple points of entry.
That just Yeah, it'll probably be more of my comments, but I just wanted to understand that more, because just from like the urban design and walkability perspective, it's kind of the opposite. It has that vibe of, like you're walking in Manhattan and you got the scaffolds over you. It's not what you want. You want the opposite, where, the lower level is coming out at you and it doesn't feel so tall because you don't see the top. And by doing this, it accommodates one, but just it feels like it's a little more imposing now. And I don't know, I'm just wrestling with that. Like, I didn't really see it from these, but seeing the nice renderings, just trying to see if there's any more relief that could have been done a different way. And just wanted to understand if you guys consider the opposite. But I see your point with juggling the grade changes. That's where I just I'm looking at the site view or the site plan, and it just looks like everything could still move east, quite a bit, at least 10 feet to the property line. And that's where I would for sure give up a lot of the setbacks close to the highway. So I know that's where you have the stormwater, but I feel like you could waste some parking and bury it under the building.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that didn't come up. I don't know that if Edina is one of the municipalities that allows that. Some municipalities do, and some absolutely don't. Like the building code strictly says that storm plumbing or storm, which is interpreted as stormwater tanks, need to be 10 feet away from a building foundation. But some municipalities, Minneapolis being one, allows you to stick it under your lowest level of parking.
Yeah, because if you're on a small site and you build it to the edges, like you have to have it under your building somewhere.
Right.
So that's just what came to mind, and I feel like if the design were that way, maybe I wouldn't have as many questions or reservations, honestly. So it's just kind of where I'm at. That's it for my questions. Any other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Fowl.
To your thought, I do like the walkway, the public walkway in front, having that underneath. I just want it to continue around the building, right? That's where I'd want to go. And right now you've got it kind of cut off for the restaurant, and that the public can't go all the way around.
Oh, I see.
That way.
Oddly enough, we are looking at that and possibly needing exiting. So we would look at, it wouldn't be a sidewalk per se, because obviously, but we're looking at a connection that would come here and either turn north to here or come down to the sidewalk.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, because that
And it gives
becomes another streetscape, and I think.
And it also provides a nice exit out of there, heading towards the east.
Right,
So
and then
that-
pedestrians like
I think
that.
we will be doing that. It's just a matter of, does it turn north or does it, I think it probably turns south down to the sidewalk.
It's just a matter of what is the character of that.
Yeah.
And then I agree with you about, I don't want to see an elevation shift or a mass shift just to do to check a box. But one of the things that has always seemed most unresolved to me is this garage entrance. When I see the little open areas, it seems like a little postmodern happening, like, the entrance to the garage and then the window spacing right above that.
Yeah, those will be a separate material. We're looking at, a metal panel that likely covers those of some sort so that you won't see that. But you'll read a different material, but it won't be open and it will not be.
Okay. So I'm just saying in terms of thinking about that 212 feet versus the 200 feet, because I do think it's there for a reason, and as soon as we start letting those variances happen, they'll happen. I'm just saying that feels unresolved, and that 200 feet. And the other thing is, Commissioner Alcar mentioned this a little bit, like finding the front entrance. Right now, with setting it back and the kind of similar or like all cream colored, you can't, it's hard to see the entrance as an entrance separate than the other one. So it just seems like it needs a little bit more. So those pieces feel a little unresolved to me.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's it for questions. This is a public hearing. All right, so thank you. Stay tuned. We'll open this to a public hearing like last time. You guys can sit down and
thank
we'll
you.
probably bring you
Appreciate all
back
the
up
comments.
if we have more questions later. Public hearing, so for those who might have just tuned in and are tuning in virtually, if you'd like to participate and testify, please call the following number, 312-535-8110, and enter access code 2868-688-0356. The password is 5454, and press star 3 on your keypad to get into the queue to speak. While we let you do that, as we'll look to this room, is anyone here that would like to testify in person? Please come forward to either podium, and you have 3 minutes to do so. State your full name and address. All right, not seeing anyone. Guess I don't know where we're at in that minute. Maybe give it another 30 seconds.
Yeah, another 15 maybe.
Okay.
Nobody has joined the queue to speak, so I think we're safe to proceed.
Welcome a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Public hearing's closed. All right, we'll bring it back to the commission to deliberate. Maybe if we have questions for each other, we could start with that. Otherwise, I'd say let's just go in a line with comments. And yeah, Commissioner Alkire.
I wanted to just, maybe it's for Director Teague, the 200-foot code, where does that come from, and what's the objective? Is it entirely visual, or is that related to the 200 feet mini blocks in Southdale for pedestrian experience, or what's it all about?
It does come from the design experience guidelines in Southdale. The idea is to not have that solid 200-foot wall. We struggled with this one a little bit because it is broken up on the main level like we've talked about. But that's the origin of it. It comes from the Southdale design guidelines.
Maybe some other commissioners have a point of view on this, but the way I've always understood it, it had to do with pedestrian experience more than visual, although I can see how a large blank wall will have a visual impact as well. Do I have that wrong or right?
It's both. I think it's more of just like the cheapest way to build it is a solid wall with no articulation or feature, and we just don't want to accommodate, the cheapest version to build something, because it sacrifices aesthetics as well as, if you go much over that, then yeah, now the pedestrian experience is less desirable.
Does the balcony count as a break? That counts as a break in the measurement?
So Commissioner Nelson also brought up related to materials, and I'd seem to agree more than disagree about that too, with all glass, and then just in metal panels, and then not kind of knowing what the next one is. I feel like I want to know a little more, like, is there going to be some natural material? Like if it is kind of a wood look, maybe that'd satisfy it, but I think we do lose some maybe without grounding it in some, stone or brick, kind of coming down to the level, but I don't know if other people have thought about that too. Do you have further thoughts on it? Hey, your mic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I guess it's all, it was just more of a break somewhere in there with different materials and looking differently, more like we had with the guideline.
To your comment about the cheapest thing to build is a square box, in my mind, if it was a very interesting exterior of a square box, I would probably object less. The balconies are high up, right? So that doesn't create the engagement with this rest of the neighborhood, the pedestrian environment. So in my mind, I don't. It may check a box, but I don't necessarily get the benefit from a design perspective of those balconies. I agree that the variation in materials, especially along the first floor and the pedestrian scape, are a little lacking or not fully developed. And Commissioner Merriweather mentioned the parking on the front. The parking on the back seem really unresolved in my mind, and that is part of the pedestrian way of approaching the building. I know it's back a house, but there's no renderings of it really that made me feel like I understood how walking by that was going to relate to this building in a way that felt like you weren't coming in the back.
A question for you guys. When you were talking about Scandinavian materials on the first floor, I'm assuming you mean wood.
That's correct, yeah, the lighter would look kind of like white oak material.
Okay. And concrete.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, sorry.
And it's called out in the materials of, I believe it's called out as a wood look, metal panel maybe?
Yeah.
Can't remember what
And just to be kind of clear with what we're studying is two of the options are a real wood material. Obviously, we have to vet both cost and durability and all the other things. So when we hear natural material, wood certainly would apply to a natural material. It's, obviously executing it in a type 1 building has its challenges, and that's why we've got hundreds of samples at our desks right now trying to figure this out. But the idea would that be this has a feel and a texture and a warmth of a natural material.
Well, for me, if there's that warmth or a little bit more of that warmth on the main level or the dock or this dock piece as it shifts through the building, not just on one side, but maybe all the way through, and that is at a pedestrian at height and right. And I think if you can experience the wood at your height as you walk around this building, I think that would be an attractive thing.
Gonna add something?
Mainly what kind of what's already been said, really around how the dock is set off from the rest of the building and the resolved, on kind of a little bit unresolved how that's going to play in, and then also the entrance from the back, like Commissioner Hahnemann said, not feeling like, I feel like we didn't see a lot of definition there. See how that kind of interplays with this. So yeah, in terms of like architectural, how much it stands out, how much it's less of a glass box and more of something visually interesting. I just would. It's more around that dock piece and how, I guess you said, if it's warm all the way through, and how that stands out compared to the rest of the building. If it's like visually, I don't know, intriguing compared to the box that sits underneath, like that would be a good thing. But I don't know that all that has been completely 100% set in stone yet. Use my metaphor.
Yeah. Other questions for each other? Anything, Stu? Yeah, you got something.
No, yeah, this is definitely an interesting project. Just a question for the commissioners on the glass box idea. I know stone and brick is kind of a material that emphasizes quality. You could kind of see it with this building a little bit on the outside. But if we project into the future, as we look at, 20 years out, what would be considered modern design in the future? And I'm guessing it might be leaning more towards glass. So I guess the question I have for folks on the commission is, is glass something that you could see as a future material for more of this area? Or do we still think that stone and brick is kind of what the standard should be for this region?
Happy to jump in. The John Deere building that was done by Arrow Saarinen in 1968 in Moline, Illinois, is still a beautiful building. And it's been there for, I can't count, 60 years. Mies van der Rohe. I mean, there's been a lot of metal buildings that have been, glass buildings that have been around. And part of the reason why I think I'm okay with this is because there's 2 or 3 or 4, there's several bills in front of the Minnesota House and the Minnesota State Senate that are, and they've got bipartisan support. They were there last year, they're there this year. They seem to be gathering a little bit more support, and may make it out of House and might get voted on, and who knows how they'll come out. But some of the things they're talking about are taking away the number of public meetings that cities can have, taking away the right of cities to kind of talk about or weigh in on some residential development on commercial projects, that anything can be done. It just has to be worked out with staff. And another one is taking away aesthetic requirements from cities. And I'm starting to think that that might be the more democratic thing to do. And one of the reasons I'm comfortable here is because this is Opus's headquarters. This is not a cheap spec building. This is their saying this is what we do. And so I think they're going to do it well. I think there's still a few things to kind of work out, but I'm okay with this.
I would say currently it is in our code for material. So, I mean, that's part of it too. It's not just a choice. You have to, right? For 60 feet or whatever it is. Yeah.
Also, though, I think, Commissioner Smith, to address your point in terms of what the future holds, I mean, part of it is according to what the requirements are and what's in the code, but it also has to do with consumer demand. So, and I think in what I'm hearing from Nick is that this is what this is the kind of thing that people want, and that this has appeal to buyers of the space and stuff. So I think that's also a determinative factor of what the future is going to look like too. And to Commissioner Feld's point, I think a very well-made point is the fact that this is their headquarters. You're not going to have a developer, a developer's going to have, a headquarters that's going to be an example, as a building, so.
I don't know if this answers it, but there's dimensions to that question too, just about shape. So I think kind of like Commissioner Nelson mentioned, for one, I think it would look more appealing to have those 4 glass stories be 8, and narrower on one side, where you have more of a glass tower. Some of it's the material, but also how broad it might be across a site, especially compared to nothing else around it. So there's that too. And I think it feels like most of the comments and questions are really along the ground level. And when you look at just historic places, brick and stone have lasted millennia in places that are storefront, where there's glass or something open. But those materials will always last and be at least, if you go by that logic, will be appreciated. When you look at some of the other historic areas around town and the 50th in France, what's nice about it, right up against the right-of-way, or as close as we can, you know, to setbacks, is, you know, your proximity to those materials. So like if you're interfacing it, it's like kind of the brick and stone may add more of a warmth than metal panel and concrete. Just those are typically more industrial materials. If treated well, or like have a faux finish like wood, it can be better. But I mean, there's layers to, you know, what we want, but that kind of has been Edina's guideline. And you look around the city, and a lot of what is built around here has more of those durable materials. I mean, I don't know if we want to just go down the line and just share comments, and then if there's a particular motion. And just a reminder, this, you know, this ultimately is decided upon to the city council. So if there's a motion with like a condition, or maybe one particular item isn't finding support, that's okay. Also, we could add a condition if there's like a very particular element or part of the building or something that we want addressed better. We can tack that on, and then it's more of just like an asterisk to the council. Carrie, anything else worth noting?
No, I think that sums it up. You can pull out a certain variance and just vote on that.
I'm struggling a little bit because these images are a lot more developed, albeit there's still some pieces that I have question marks around than the ones that are in our packet. And I came in here with a set of thoughts based on those images, and I'm trying to pivot in place. There's been a lot of really good comments. I guess maybe fundamentally what I'm struggling with is I think since 2023 and the other project, there's been some really clear conversation from planning, from the mayor, from council about where we see variances or exceptions for this parcel, sort of like easy, no-brainer, everybody's on board with more height closer to the highway. And those aren't really the variances we're talking about here. So trying to wrap my brain around the direction that's been sort of reiterated throughout the conversations about this space, and juxtaposing to what they are asking for, which isn't sort of the direction I think a lot of the conversation has been in. And still, and again, my bigger struggle with small area plans with these guiding documents, I don't think this checks a lot of the boxes that those guiding documents created for Grandview. Whether or not we should be creating those, that's a separate conversation. But it does feel hard to give variances for a project that we aren't, as a city, getting the public spaces or the public goods or the dynamic that we were envisioning for that space. So that's just what I'm wrestling with. You know, honestly, I would love to take this deck and just sit with it for a minute, because it does feel very different than what was in the package. So yeah, that's where I am.
Well, I for one, you know, the lot is more densely used than the guidelines, and I think we want more density, so I appreciate that, and I'm okay with the density variance. I'm okay with the setback variances. I am okay with the glass on top. I think if and I actually think we're getting a couple of public spaces without any kind of TIF ask at all. The corner sidewalk, the reverse curve to the roundabout, or the pulling back, a different kind of diameter to that, provides a little public space without the city having to pay for it. And if there is an exit, so you can kind of walk up and go to the restaurant, that's another little public secret space that I think we get without having to pay for it. So I think if the main floor, this dock idea was a little friendlier, warmer, maybe in some way, and if there's some resolution to that parking entrance, I think we talked about that last time as well. And if that could help with that expanse of 200 feet. I don't know, I mean, I'm not going to die on the 200 feet. I'm just saying I'm probably not going to vote yes on that one. And all the other ones I agree with.
I like this project. I don't know. I think this is overall like a huge benefit for this area. I mean, to be able to get a headquarters of a company and to get a bunch of other tenants and I'm looking at an aerial view right now of Grandview, and it's just like the worst you could possibly. Not to blame anybody, but I mean, I'm looking at all the other sites. I'm looking at everything else. It's the street. It's a massive surface parking lot, and then it's a building that doesn't have anything interesting or activating about it whatsoever. And that just goes parcel after parcel after parcel. And then sometimes there's a building right in the middle of like an entire moonscape of surface property around the entire thing. And for this area to change, like you got to like start incrementally. And there's one, the Avador looks like it did well, but then this one does a lot of, I think, what we're looking for. I mean, it activates a corner nicely. It puts something interesting on the corner that's not there now. I thought you did a thoughtful job of making it so that people could circulate around the restaurant or whatever the tenant ends up being there and sit outside and activate the space that way. I think you did a pretty good job of activating Arcadia. I mean, you can't go the whole way up because of the parking issue. But this is a tough area. And I think this checks a lot of boxes for starting to build a structure out to the edges of these streets the right way. And then hopefully, like, it fills in and people follow along. And the whole area kind of improves and changes along with it. So, and some of this stuff's a little bit subjective. You know, I think everybody had really good comments here on the commission about materials and aesthetics and, you know, whatever. And all those comments are good ones. The glass itself doesn't really bother me, but that's just a personal subjective preference. And the fact that behind the building on the freeway side isn't particularly activated also doesn't bother me. I don't think anybody's going back there for anything. And I think it is right to push the attention, the focus to the corner, to the roundabout, and to the part of Arcadia that we hope people will be spending time on, so that like this starts to set a little bit of a precedent and then continues on. So, you know, there's some interesting questions I think to be had around some of the specific variances, and we'll see how people feel about that. But overall, I mean, I think this would be, I think this would do a lot for the area in a positive way. So that's it.
I just want to be real quick on a question, actually, now that it's came up about the 200 feet piece. Is that actually a variance being requested that we're voting on? Because I mean, is that codified in terms of needing a variance here? Because we've mentioned that multiple times now, not like, you just said they wouldn't support a variance for the 200 feet, but I don't understand where that fits in.
We did notice it as a variance initially, and then we've had the discussion about, because it's on the main level, it sticks out. Does that satisfy the code? So I guess the question remains, we could address it here.
Okay, so TBD. I guess that's a question then for us, the commission, to think about, right? Do we need a variance request for that here, right? That's what we're asking, and whether that actually fulfills the code or not.
Yeah, and you could make a condition of the project that at the top level, that side should meet that 200-foot provision, to make it clear that we're not just talking on the lower level, but the upper as well.
Okay. All right. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. One thing I wanted to return to was the discussion on the small area plan piece. Having just come out of a small area plan recently and developing one, and thinking about how will that evolve over the next few years. And I know in the previous discussion, the sketch plan review, you talked a lot about Grandview. And I guess, some of the difficulty with this site for me, and I think as we think about how it integrates with the small area plan, is that it's kind of the first real big thing coming in now, because the bottom kind of fell out of the small area plan when the public works site kind of went, right? And that was kind of the anchor which the Grandview site was built on. So seeing everything was kind of your favorite sketch, right? There's the public works site. It's really built up and nice, and how we interplay with that site. And then once that fell through, okay, we're kind of rebuilding this. And here lies in the difficulty of small area plans. If I think about Lincoln Londonderry and on one of the corners, somebody built a gas station, and then one of the industrial tenants decided they never wanted to leave for the next 100 years. It kind of really puts a big, that really hurts our small area plan and how we envision that coming through. And then how the planning commission and the city council kind of, I guess, tee off on that development. And what happens, all right, if there's a lot of change in, I guess, the underlying assumptions around the small area plan. As far as we talk about, sorry, let me step back again. Small area plan, I think overall, the activation piece, kind of being the first in step here, it brings more life and community and activity to the Grandview area. It's kind of like Will said, it's not just surface parking and, a desert circus parking around a building. I do think that there is a little bit to be desired on the east side, kind of like you said, in terms of, west side, the building being able to push east. I think when I look at this, and this is maybe just a very personal preference thing, and I think about how the deck and the sidewalk there, that big swath of green space. I like vegetation, don't get me wrong, trees and everything, but I actually think it takes away from the activation just a little bit, rather than having that be open. When I think about the original proposal that was here, and it was kind of like a park, and there was a sculpture and stuff like that, that seemed more active to me than what is here. Because once those trees mature, you might not see that balcony quite as much, and once this really does fill in, again, you're kind of on the sidewalk, and it's nice, there's vegetation, but maybe a little bit something left to be desired there. So I think if we're in a perfect world, yes, this would step back more, and maybe be a little more active on that west side. But that being said, nothing's ever perfect. I think it's a pretty great proposal as it's come forward. And, I'm sure you'll have more to say on that west side, but yeah. So recap, the small area plan piece, again, difficulty there. I don't want to get too hung up on how this does or does not fit into what was there, because the small area plan to me is kind of it's been destroyed a little bit by the fact that the public works site is not defined. And then, yeah, I talked about the activation piece. So, okay, all right, that's what I got.
Thank you again for the presentation. I just want to acknowledge all the hard work that you guys put into this project. I could see that there's a lot of thinking, a lot of thought. When I look at this site and the size of it, one thought comes to my mind is the theory of constraints, right? You have a lot of constraining things that you're trying to work within, and you're trying to do the best you can within an irregularly shaped spot that's on a slope. And so I think what you've put together here really incorporated quite a bit of the ideas that we shared the last time. When I looked through all the variances, I was on the comparables, like the floor area ratio, the height, all the other elements, the setback requirements, all those make sense to me, since these are really large streets. And so it all made sense to me from that perspective. So I'm okay with those requirements, setback requirements. The only, the two items that you addressed was how you would activate the dock on top, and I think you covered that. With what you think the proportion of that would be useful, and the fact that you have to exit back into the building to get out, which limits the amount of space on top you could activate. So I think you answered my questions there. On the utility and the electrical box on the north side, I circled that one for discussion. I think you covered that as well. And there's going to be some screening that would go into that space. As I was kind of mentioning before, with the amount of glass, I'm actually okay with the glass. I see that as a future type of material, and I think this being your flagship corporate site, right, that's important, right, because you're kind of projecting to your potential clients, here's the quality of the work that we do. The only thing that I think kind of kept bubbling up here was just on the materials on the first level. And so I know we have this idea of the metal that looked like wood on its panels, but it seems like the leaning seems to be more on that stone brick material. So if you had a rendering of that on the first level, I think that would really connect and ground, as you were saying, the building to the rest of the area. That might be a change that I would like to see as one aspect here. The rest of the project, I like what you've done with trying to activate the west side, and to Commissioner Day's point, there might be some opportunities to open up that space a little bit more to activate it. When you walk up the street on the west side and you look at the building, it's recessed, and I like that because it kind of gives some kind of depth, right? So it's not completely a glass wall in front of you. And so if you look beyond 20 feet up, then it's a glass wall. But if your eyesight is between 0 and 20 feet, it's recessed and it's like kind of inviting. So I think recessing the dock made sense, and putting the chairs and the benches and the umbrellas and such out there really helped a lot. So I think overall, I really like this project. I like what you guys are trying to do. Again, it's a theory of constraints, right? You're trying to do as much as you can to meet all the requirements in a very irregularly shaped site. I think considering the material choices on the first floor might be a factor. Opening up the activation on the west side might be a factor that you should look at. But overall, I'm in support of the concept that you're going for, and the glass idea. I think that modernizes that space quite a bit. So that's just my thoughts on project overall.
We haven't talked very much about sustainability. I understand that you are not required, if it becomes a PCD2, you're not required to follow the sustainability guidelines, because that only applies for TIF projects and PUDs. But I still think it deserves conversation or addressing. And because there was a sustainability questionnaire in there. So I did not see a commitment to recycling even on the scrap and the demolished materials, which I think is kind of a minimum effort that I would really like to see made. There's no gray water usage. The only thing we heard addressed tonight was that we're going to put pollinators, which is great. But in terms of building materials, no recycling, no organics. I would really like to see some effort made in the whole sustainability. There was, I think, one mention of some EV charging stations, which I imagine that you'll do and hope you have more. And then tangentially, I think you did a great job with the, was it short-term and long-term bike areas, which is great. But I was very disappointed to see that the city doesn't anticipate putting any bike lanes or bike paths in. It's not in their 5-year capital improvement plan, which is really unfortunate, because I think the area around there is a good area to bike, but I don't think that the roundabouts lend themselves or make biking any safer in that area. I do appreciate the comparisons, Carrie, that you gave us with the nearby buildings and the prior approvals that were given to this area, because that does give me some context, even though the zoning approvals were different. It still gives me context for what the city is considering in terms of acceptable size and FAR and things like that. Now, having all of that notwithstanding, I do think it's a great project, and I think you bring diligence and tenacity to the project and to the area, and I think it really will raise the profile of the area, and I feel like it, you know, your presentation and a lot of the slide deck inspires confidence, so I'm behind it.
I think it'd be really great for our city to have some top quality new office space in this location. So completely on board with the community problem that this building solves. I think it's consistent with our comprehensive plan. And also, I think it'll facilitate further developments around it that will also support our comprehensive plan. I think it's a good step forward for this area and for the city. I don't have any problems with any of the variances. I thought the staff report was very convincing and complete. And the variances seemed like smart ways of allowing something good to happen in our city. Whether or not the 200-foot wall actually needs a variance or not, I'm fine with that. I know there are different points of view. My reason for being fine with it is that northern facing is going to be viewed almost entirely from a distance, where most observers will not know the difference between 200 and 210 feet. There's no pedestrian experience to protect. To me, it would be very different if that was really some place where pedestrians were going to be, and across the street there was going to be another 210-foot wall. That would be something that we're not trying to do. To me, this doesn't trouble me very much. The two things that do trouble me, and this is just something that I hope I don't know if there's a need to put a condition, or is something that the group can really take a careful look at. I'm concerned about a safe and inviting pedestrian and bike access off of Eden. Others have mentioned that. Many of your customers, in addition to Commissioner Felt, will be coming from the east. I'll be one of them. And I just don't, what I've seen so far what I've seen so far makes me think that you want me to go all the way around the corner. And maybe you do, but it doesn't seem like the greatest way to market a product to people from the east. The second thing that, and I sort of mentioned this in the questions earlier, it's important that you have an inviting and obvious public access to the commercial space from Arcadia. It should be, I think this is in your best interest too, it should be 100% clear that the restaurant is a community amenity and not a building amenity. And right now, I know this is just a coincidence, but where you said that the front door of the restaurant is going to be, there's a tree in front of it in the drawing. So let's make sure there's no trees in front of it, and that when I'm looking from across the street or from the Jerry's ramp, I say, oh, there's that restaurant that I want to go to, or whatever it ends up being. I mean, I would even like to see steps up from the sidewalk, but I see what you see about I see what you mean about the grade, and I don't know how daunting a stairway that might be, and maybe we're better off without it, but you get the point. I mean, people have to think that restaurant is for them, not for Opus employees and for the other folks who were in your building. That's all for me.
All right. Well, this is a very topographically difficult site. I think they've done some pretty amazing things, especially from what was presented last time. Even though I wasn't here, I did look back at what that was, and the comparison you gave today was very nice to have. Again, I really appreciate the public spaces without any dedicated TIF to the project. A little bit of a pocket park, as was mentioned there, and the greenery and the sidewalks. Now, one thing I note is on the rendering, it probably just because it looks better, but it's stamped concrete there. I don't know if there's a city code or what can go there, if that's really going to be stamped or not, but I guess it doesn't really matter. But yeah, the public space is very nice. I like the concept of having a corporate headquarters in our town. It brings a lot of value to Edina. One thing I noted when he spun the building around and showed that, I think it was up on the north side. Initially, I thought that was the east side we were looking at, but the parking on that north side is a bit of an ode to the building that's there, because it almost looks like a little bit of that stilted building parking situation there, which again, I don't mind. That's nice. I would like to, again, no control over this, but I'd like to see that Highway 100 frontage road on the north side of this building go away fairly soon. Again, you didn't have that land to play with, and probably didn't contact MnDOT about buying it because they're not going to give it to you. So, but when we thought envisioned this, getting rid of all the different ramps that go on and off of Highway 100 and kind of limiting that was one of the goals of that study. The parking, I asked the question about parking earlier, and I apologize, that was my error. It was clearly shown on the heights, building height study, that there were the levels there, the two below and one above grade. My feeling, personal, again, this is totally a personal feeling, but ideally, this building would fit better on the public works site. Again, that wasn't available to you, but again, I don't want to hinder what happens on that public works site, and I'd like to again see something happen over there fairly soon. Again, not really tied to this project, so I'm getting off base here a little bit. And I'm really not as concerned about the variance as I was when I walked in here. The setback variance, I should say. I think the building, although it's a little oversized, it does fit there, and it allows for the. It looks a lot better on the west side than it did with the previous version, and plenty of sidewalk, circulation around, at least along the street side. I'm not as concerned about the east side as some of the other commissioners were, having a full path around the building that doesn't. Ideally, there'll be a road a little bit closer over there someday, but we'll see where and when that happens. My feeling is this site needs to be redeveloped. So I applaud you for stepping up and being as diligent as you've been, and been here how many countless times it seems like, to get this done. I think a lot of buildings and a lot of space in Grandview does need to be redeveloped. And I already mentioned public works site. I'd like to see get redeveloped sooner than later. And again, my overall feeling is there's just a lot of variances being requested, and in a way trying to shoehorn this project in. It might just be too big for the site. But those are my thoughts on it. So that's all I
Commissioner
have.
Bennett, can I ask a question?
Oh yeah, I was like, what?
It's the voice of God. Yeah. Am I correct in understanding that one of the things we're approving tonight is the site plan? Not just, okay. So how do we think about that when what was in our packet doesn't tie to what we were presented with tonight? Like I'm thinking about on the Eden side with the parking and the trucks tucking under. So just, I would like to be clear to under.
That was in the packet. The changes are that the renderings have been
More revealing, let's just.
more revealing, yes.
Didn't you say the
Stuff where
trucks are
that
coming
tree
in under the building? It doesn't look.
Is that the old one?
Yeah, let's just be sure here. Yeah, where the, kind of that black dashed line is.
There's a revised site plan. One of the attachments is labeled revised site plan, which is reflective on the screen. Was a separate attachment.
What page are you on? You have the whole packet?
I wanted it for clarity of our motion, just to be clear that what the site plan is, but it may be my error.
See what you're saying. Yeah, that's incorrect. That's A0-2. I don't know if you guys have that. At least we can clarify what we're seeing right now should be reflected, and we can at least add that condition. If that makes sense.
Yep. And if I could clarify before you get into your deliberation here on the 200-foot. So staff believes that there's not a variance requested for that because it changes directions on the lower level. However, you could make a condition if that's something you're not comfortable with on the upper level to tie to the other variances for setbacks to require that that provision should be met on the upper levels as well. It's not clear.
Which specific ordinance? Because I've seen the 200 feet mentioned for POD and PID, but I didn't see it in the PCD ordinance section. So I'm just trying to figure out which.
It reads this, the way the code reads is no building facade shall be longer than 200 feet without changing directions by a minimum of 90 degrees. So it's not clear exactly.
Is that in the PCD section, specific section? Because like I said, I only had seen it in the POD and PID. I hadn't seen it in the PCD. That's why I was confused about that earlier.
Check that.
And the only reason I do not mind a warehouse-looking wall. I mean, I don't mind the 212 feet of glass and steel at all. The only thing that it's bothering me about is if we have a 200-foot facade requirement is, does the building, if God forbid, the hilltop goes away and they want to do a 220-foot long facade? I mean, I just want to make sure we're not opening the door for really long facades. That's all.
Well, maybe to fill in some of this research time, I can share some of my comments. How about that? You guys keep looking through that. Okay, sweet. All right, you guys ready? I have some comments. So, let's just say, more or less, this is just very, very exciting. This has been a property since the beginning of the framework, and I served on a community advisory team as well, following up on that. This seemed like an obvious site that was ripe for redevelopment and could be transformative in a variety of ways. One of which is it's kind of on this prominent corner, and it's a funky site, but topographically and how you approach it, there's just such an opportunity to kind of, I'd say there's like 4 entrances to Grandview area from different directions, and this is one of them. So this kind of is like a gateway into this area from like the southeast and from the south. So how you have the building oriented and just the amount of detail that's gone into, tearing that wall down that's out there right now and kind of bringing people back into the site is just so enticing and beautiful. I mean, looking at the renderings, it's hard not to smile to be like, this is going to be great. That exact image. And I feel like that shines, and I would say my only hang up is maybe like a 2-part thing. And, in Edina, when you are served cake, you want to eat it too. So obviously it's like, here's this beautiful cake, and now I need to have my opinions. But this to me, feels like what it ought to look like when you're looking at the building as you walk up Arcadia. And that's kind of that image that Carrie said I would love, and I love referencing. I think it's like page 19 of the framework. Is, back to what Commissioner Day said, we put together these frameworks and these small area plans, and it's not like it's trash because the public works site hasn't happened. It was always imagined that they're looking at each other. And so from what I see here, this is like just a killer welcome to this area and your building and your project. And I just wish that was taken around the corner more. And I feel like what happened with stepping it in and kind of tucking the dock under the building is you kind of almost like ate the entrance and that welcoming on that other side, like the building's eating it instead of letting it come around the corner. And I think I'd be okay with the materials if that dock actually was still over and around, because as you look at the west elevation, it's not as clear and prominent that this is like this really welcoming, commercial space. It's like, here's this tall building over here. And again, what you won't see is as you're walking down that sidewalk, I mean, it is 5 stories right next to you. And I mean, that's not the type of appearance you want there or from across the street. So I feel like, like if the building shifted back the 4 feet and you added a column line where that infiltration thing is, and then stepped your building back a full column line, so you still had a proud thing, like I would just be like 100%, like just design wise, you have kind of like this podium that brings the pedestrian around, and you could make a much more prominent and obvious entrance, like Commissioner Alkire was saying. But currently with it underneath, the lid, it just has more to be desired. That said, like if this was built, tomorrow, it's going to be incredible. It's just, I feel like one of our key jobs is to like look at the future of this area, and there's a framework developed around it, and so we have to take mind of what's west as well as what's north. Like right now, it's this ugly frontage road, but eventually that might go away, and the building across the street might develop. And so as you build this, like we hope this is sitting here for 50, 100 years. But if we do the wrong thing on 2 of the sides and then it redevelops, like you're losing opportunity and just passing it down the line. So I would say if for whatever reason you can't get creative and do some shifting or prominence with kind of that west side, I think you need to do something on the east side to just draw people in and around and just use that space. And I would be okay without the 200-foot variance on the north side. I'm fine with that as long as the west side improves. So I would more strongly recommend a brick or stone at that ground level where the parking is. I don't think tying metal panel in to the ground is necessary. I think if you had that more natural material, it's just a more warm break for a pedestrian to be walking down. It'll feel more inviting and warm versus a metal panel. So like, it's very obvious you're walking by a parking entrance, but there's ways to dress that with, you know, brick and different material. And then at least as you look at the building from the public works site, that whole first level would look different, which is I think what we would want, you know, more than, at least that would tie in that kind of public realm into that amenity, the restaurant. And I think just two things: if this remains this awesome office that with multiple tenants and you have this killer restaurant there, this is going to be just crazy successful. I mean, it'll be like the Hazelwood that's just not in Edina, you know. We just want more of that kind of concoction, a mixed use site that allows people to come in and gather that don't just work there. So I think it's great job. Any other comments? Yeah. We'll go down the line. Commissioner Day.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to go back to the 200-foot thing because I was looking it up. So I was able to find it, section 36-618, number 11. I love how our code is structured out. Yeah. Number 11, point C. Yeah, that's what. There you go. So I have to be very specific. But it is a pretty vague ordinance in terms of how that's written. So I think we need to have a discussion about what the intent there is, and maybe it's something that we think about when we revisit the code here soon. We talk about some clarity around that piece. I mean, that's a very specific thing, but it's something worth revisiting since we're kind of don't have a good answer to it right now. Yeah, Commissioner Fell.
I would hate to lose the plinth, like the secondary kind of secret public walkway.
What?
The plinth, the level base that the whole building is sitting on, that's where the patio is, and that's where they're going to continue it down the east side.
Yeah.
I think the plinth is.
I just think, like to Commissioner Day's point, like you create such a buffer between the sidewalk and the building where the building's the shortest, you know? It's like you actually want it the opposite. So I feel like that plinth could still extend more to the west, you know? Like it could. It won't be as nice. You won't pack as many things in there, but like it's a little steeper, but you still could get stuff there. But having that secondary balcony really is a huge amenity. And if that carries around, like you mentioned, that's great. Any other comments? Any potential motions? I mean, is there a particular item that people would feel strong enough to condition? I know Commissioner Alkire, you had a couple points. And, you know, again, a condition is mostly just a note to the council at this point. So if there's general support for certain conditions, I would say there probably is. It seems like there's a number of things that deal with level 1. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I've been trying to think about how to word that. So my main concern is pedestrian and bike access off Eden. So Director Teague, if we wanted the council to pay special attention to that in their review, how would one word a condition? Any coaching on that?
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Good.
You could add a condition there, number 14, that the applicant consider revising the plans to provide a more safe pedestrian and bike access off of Eden into the building. Something to that effect.
Sounds great, thanks. I'm writing that down.
And I'd like to add to that, being able to kind of walk around the plinth from, rather than going down the hill and up the hill. If you decide to get a cup of coffee, you get to a shortcut. You get to walk all the way around the plinth and down the east side on Eden.
I'm curious.
Plinthe.
I think you could word that just a sidewalk around the building. On the east and north side.
But can I, a follow-up to your point, though? How is the applicant supposed to make a safer bike and pedestrian access? I mean, I understand, and I think that's necessary and it's needed, but is that not a city issue? I mean, what would you propose how would you propose that it get resolved?
Well, I think some of the things we talked about were like imagining a pedestrian or a bicyclist coming from the east, how would they access the building? And right now there's a driveway which is 2 lanes of cars. So there's not an obvious pedestrian access, nor is there an obvious bike access. And where do they go once they're onto the property? So to me, it's on the property. It's not off the property, although there are plenty of issues off the property too.
Yeah, I mean.
So I'm concerned more about.
Once you're on the property.
Yeah, because I mean,
Okay.
literally you have to go around, I would be encouraged to go around the corner at this point, and I'd rather not do that.
Do we have any concerns with the materials on the first level, being stone and brick? Is that something that folks feel strongly about?
I mean, I have no issue with the glass at all, but I do just because of the sheer height of the building there that just you won't be able to see or feel that right now. I mean, you're going to be walking a few feet away from 5 stories. Like, I just don't think we need metal panel there to tie it in.
Yeah, I agree with that. I wish I had said that thought earlier. Just looking at the rendering again, the entrance to the parking or whatever that was, just felt a little like it didn't need that. I mean, I know it's subjective, whatever, aesthetic, but I tend to agree with you.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that came up quite a bit tonight. So instead of the metal panel, look at having stone and brick being on the first level as a material that we want to have them consider.
You mentioned that too. Was it more throughout the building, or was it concentrated at the ground level?
I mean, the materials across the building, across the upper levels of the building were one concern. The other concern was at the parking entrances and exits there. It's just, yeah, I mean, those were, I mean, I know it's 90% of the building now, but those were, there's glass across it and then those 2 entrances mainly. I think I like the dock that comes out, and I like that, the landscaping and everything. And again, I'm not sure if to talk about the biking entrance. I mean, I'm coming out from that east side. I'm going to come down that sidewalk and roll right in the parking lot and park my bike at a rack inside. That's not going to bother me. But I understand where do you feel like you should go in the building? Where does it make you feel safer? There's not be cars. I mean, there's 330 spots. There's not going to be 330 cars coming and going every hour. I mean, there's going to be cars coming and going throughout the day. But to me, it would feel relatively safe just going in that south entrance, southeast corner, where the driveway is. But that's just me for the biking part. So.
Did we have a view from Eden in the newer, fancier renderings?
Is that like a 10:30 p.m. shot? Maybe we could go out and see what it looks like.
And you kind of get, this obviously isn't a rendering, but you start to get a little bit of it here.
I think just that image in general would be really helpful to the future conversations and understanding how the pedestrians and bikes would access
Could be
and with the
simple as nice
materials.
signs and, you know, other
Yeah.
things that. Well, it seems like we have maybe a couple conditions. East axis entrance, prominence and details around it, sidewalk around the plinth, and then yeah, and then different material choice at the ground level by the parking entrances. Are there any like other conditions that feel like there's kind of unanimous support of?
That it's a tapas restaurant, can we put that as a condition?
Yeah, that was part of that.
So we got 3 conditions. I don't think we need a variance on the 200 feet, on the 200-foot part. I think it's vaguely worded enough that you could legally argue that they met the requirement, as staff said too. So I don't think we need a variance there.
Yeah, just I think we ought to be cautious too, because maybe the council, they do want to apply it. So I don't know, maybe just be prepared. You know, maybe it's doing what Meriwether said. I'm looking at like the west elevation. Maybe it is just a row of balconies that then at least bring it under 200 feet. Just something, right?
Yeah. Or maybe all the building services move to that north elevation. No, the restrooms, the mechanical, whatever, right now it's in the middle of the building. Yeah, just.
I think we're good.
So are we ready to make a motion?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. I'll take a shot at it. So I will motion that we recommend the city council approve the rezoning subdivision site plan and variances, subject to the conditions that we listed off in the last 45 minutes or so. And yeah, I think that covers it. So. Want me to list off all the
Be clear
conditions?
on what the conditions were?
Yeah.
Subject to the conditions that Carrie Teague has written down.
Carrie, could you read them out loud?
I'll take a shot, and I can always go back and listen to the tape for more. But I've got applicant consider safe pedestrian and bike access off of Eden to the east entrance, provide additional sidewalk around the plinth of the building on the north and east side, provide stone or brick or alternative materials to be added on the ground level.
Is the plinth north and east, or was it north and south?
The plinth is on the west side, all along Arcadia.
Yeah.
This is the plinth.
Didn't you want it to go to
And
Eden, which
yeah,
is south?
And Nick's already said they're going to do that.
Right, but Carrie said he said north and east. Didn't you mean your
West and south.
west and south, not north and east?
I believe east and south. You come off of this and you kind of come down east and south, right?
Got it.
Because it already connects this way.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
east and
Yes.
south.
Yes.
Can I ask a process question? I couldn't get enough of a sense while we were talking that there were five of 9 in favor of the materials change. Maybe it's academic, but because I don't particularly concerned about that, and I would vote against it if I could, but I don't know if I need to jeopardize the whole process. I mean, would you mind having a voice vote on that one to see whether that should be included?
And I'm just going to say, I think they've got enough direction to figure it out.
Have enough what?
I think they have enough direction from us to think through that.
Well, the The condition is saying we think they should change the materials. And I just want to make sure that 5 out of 9 of us think we should change the materials. That's really my only concern.
Oh, and then I would say, right, whatever materials they pick, I don't think it has to be brick or stone, so I would vote against saying brick or stone. I would say friendlier or think through that plinth. I would just direct them to think through the first floor.
Yes, but that's not what we're saying. We're saying they need to use brick or stone.
And I'm saying I'm one of those that would be against that.
Natural materials, this was in the code.
Right, so we're saying we want to follow the code and not have that variance.
Not for the first 60 feet.
We don't want to grant that variance. Because you need it for,
No, you are
need it for
granting
the first 60 feet.
You are granting the variance. They're not, they're not fulfilling the actual.
You would be
var-
granting the
code.
variance subject to that condition.
So we would be saying, yes, it's approved, subject to them adding more natural material, which could be a wood veneer on metal to make the garages look less concrete-y and maybe warmer otherwise. Ground level.
Okay, so we're not saying brick or stone.
We're not saying brick or stone. We're saying natural, because that's what the code says.
I am clear on those two conditions now. Yep, 3. There's 3. There were 2 that I needed clarification on. I got that clarification. I got the 3 conditions, yes.
Thank you for. So we need a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Or opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay.
No,
Motion carries, so, yeah, but best of luck with you guys soaring through this, and hope the meeting with the council goes very well. Really excited. Thank you. That concludes our public hearing. So now we got chair and member comments. I'll kick one off. So just so everyone knows, there is an RFP out from the city for the public works site as of 3 weeks ago. So that's out to the development community. It's basically, you can just Google it and find it's probably like a 6-page document, but it builds on kind of a mix of what was last approved, at least what it favors, but it wants a multifaceted developer to come in, housing, commercial, focus on ownership. That's out there. Bids are due April 21st, I think. So, right, is it sometime in April, right?
That's right.
So anyways, yeah, if you know a great developer, poke them. But yeah, timing-wise, this is kind of how things go, right? That someone does something, generates a lot of interest, then it renews interest and mostly pressure, like on the city, because we own that site, to get it going again. That's all I had for chair comments. Commissioner Day?
Yeah, sorry, I know we all want to go home, but just a quick comment on the discussion around the pump house piece. I just wanted to, I didn't really add much because I thought it was covered by everybody else so well. So I just wanted to commend our discussion on that because I thought what I had written down was something that Commissioner Felt articulated, basically was that anytime the city comes forward and asks for a variance from its own code, we should clearly make sure we articulate why and are transparent as possible. I thought we did a good job of probing that and then responding to that in terms of how much discretion we have and then what the situation is different and stuff. So I thought if somebody was watching a planning commission meeting for the first time, that was a good, very good discussion. So, yeah, kudos.
Agreed. Nice point. Commissioner Elkhart.
Less than a minute. Sorry, I've been carrying this around waiting for a short meeting, and maybe that's not going to happen. So this is an article from Twin City Business called Dear Minneapolis, Uptown is Dying. Here's what we should do about it. Maybe some of you have seen it. The subhead is, it's time to face facts that Uptown is no longer cool and reimagine it as a local hub to serve those who love it. And Edina gets a shout out in here that I wanted to share. There's a paragraph towards the end. I'll give Edina credit where it's due. 50th and France is killing it. It's a dense retail, dining, and entertainment area with some housing too that not only serves the local community but draws people from all over the Twin Cities. Why can't we do something similar for Uptown? If you make it fun, enticing, and accessible, people will come. So compared favorably to Uptown.
And what publication was this?
Twin City Business.
Nice.
You know, as a former resident of Uptown for quite a long time, I feel like I've seen the headline is Uptown dead or not cool like every couple years.
Used to be so cool.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody laments how great Uptown used to be always.
That's right.
It was always the best 7 years ago.
Right, that's right.
You want to share about your...
So was it this week? I think it was this week. No, it was last week, Tuesday. I met with the folks at Point of France and shared with them the stuff that we do on the Planning Commission. It was very well received. They understand our role, I think, a lot better. There are a lot of great questions that they ask about, how do we fit into the city? What's our relationship with the city council? What do we look at? What's our mandate? How do we look at code? They also ask questions about financing and do we have any kind of role to play in financing? So I helped to clarify that.
You said absolutely.
So, no way we
You pay me.
we don't touch that. We just look at zoning and codes. But overall, engaging the community, talking to them about what we do as a commission, it's really helpful. I think folks walked away feeling like they know more, and I feel like the more opportunities we have as a team to reach out and connect with members and residents, the more we should do it. So just wanted to share that feedback with the team.
Oh, no, staff comments. Motion.
I do have a couple. Nothing from City Council. They will, the public library site that you all considered, that goes to them next Tuesday, April 1st. But just a reminder to the commission that our next meeting is April 8th, and that's a Tuesday. We'd also, hopefully if everybody is there, we'd like to take a new Planning Commission photo. So if you wouldn't mind coming 15 minutes early, we'll send out an email reminder also. That is it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's been adjourned. Thank you, everyone.